Chapter 26. When he is used to being alone and talking to himself. Fantasy of walking aimlessly in a city alone. Suddenly a voice told him to stop and drink a bowl of noodle soup. A warmth I had never felt before flowed through my throat, flowing through the heart and into the limbs. Only then did he realize that he was in the center of the world. There were crowds of people all around. Is this what instant noodles taste like? It turns out that you can drizzle some soy sauce on the poached eggs. It seemed that Hie Hie had not felt this way for a long time. It's really delicious. Hie Hie put the chopsticks back in place, and there was no soup left in the bowl. He looked at the bowl of noodles and seemed to be able to see his own expression at the moment. Laughing. Very natural and satisfying. Hie Hie, when my brother was little he loved eating the luxurious customized instant noodles I made. Hie Hie put her hands on her hips and smiled with joy and pride. Then he took the empty bowl and chopsticks from Hie Hie and skipped out. Suddenly, Hie Hie and Zhang Yan were the only ones left in the room. Hie Hie didn't lie back down, but sat directly on the edge of the bed. Teacher Zhang, I just want to ask one question. As he said this, he bent down and started putting on his shoes. His eyebrows were lowered and no expression could be seen. He wanted to confirm something. Is Li Ruan okay? Zhang Yan sat back on the sofa. I picked up the bottle of wine next to me, but found that there was no wine. I couldn't help but scratch my hair. Oh, it seems I just finished drinking it. Not very good, but he asked me to remind you. Don't do strenuous exercise, if you're fine. Just stay home. When he said the last sentence, his eyes actually stayed on Hie Hie for a second while looking for wine. Not so good? Is it about that, something that must be done? Hie Hie really didn't have the energy to delve into this matter any further at this moment. But this is indeed the first level that Hie Hie wants to know. And the others also have answers. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Some feel lucky to have survived the disaster. This is the best result. There is no doubt that Zhang Yan already knew about Hie Hie's abnormality. And don't do strenuous exercise and stay at home. Li Ruan might have said it, but Zhang Yan shouldn't have, and he wouldn't have conveyed it to Hie Hie at this moment. Therefore, this is not what Li Ruan wanted to say. But it's Zhang Yan. This was his warning to Hie Hie. Hie Hie was unable to analyze whether Zhang Yan knew about his connection with the 8 clans of Sheki. But at least one thing is certain now. Zhang Yan had no ill will towards him. At least there is no intention to kill. But I have things to do. Something was about to begin, and it was time for him to appear in some people's sight. Hie Hie put on his shoes and stepped on the ground a few more times. The sound made by the work boots in this way is actually aided a sound. Zhang Yan's expression hardly changed when he heard this answer. Still that indifferent expression. He just raised an eyebrow, seeming to be interested. Oh. After searching for a while, he actually took out a bottle of wine from the crack of the sofa. His face was full of surprise and joy. Hey, it's easy for me to find. Then he touched the edge of the bottle cap with his thumb and the cap flew off instantly. It is extremely fast and very powerful. Flying towards Hie Hie without any deviation. Hie Hie had noticed it the moment the bottle cap flew out. But he didn't dodge or evade at all. Raise your right arm. The bottle cap was already in his hand. Hie Hie took a closer look. Inside the bottle cap it says, "Thank you for your patronage." Then he threw it back to Zhang Yan. It just fell on the armrest of the sofa where he was sitting. At this moment, he had already drunk the bottle of wine he had just opened. I called your parents. The reason is, to eat. Pick up the bottle cap and take a look. Well, thank you for your patronage. You also said that I could go downstairs to change it. Forget it, go to sleep. Having said that, he lay down on the sofa. Then in less than 5 seconds he started snoring. Upon seeing this, Hie Hie directly pulled out the infusion needle from his left hand and placed it on the bedside table. Small drops of blood were still oozing from the needle hole. I don't know who gave me the injection, but I have to say it was very unprofessional. Only then did he discover that there were several needle holes near the infusion hole on his left hand. The air conditioner in the room was set on a low temperature. I don't know where the remote control is. So Hie Hie took the love feel quilt from the bed and covered Zhang Yan with it. He whispered before opening the door. Thanks. Not answering is actually already an answer. Not moving is actually moving. Hie Hie knew that he had to leave, and he had to leave now. Bang. The door opened and closed. I also turned off the lights in the room. Everything was quiet, and the only sound was the swinging of the pendulum of the ancient clock beside the bed. It makes a dong-dong sound. At this time, Zhang Yan had already leaned one hand on the armrest of the sofa, with his palm supporting his head. He was still covered with the quilt. There was a faint bright red flickering in his eyes, and it even turned into flowing light floating on his temples. He was smiling, defiant and arrogant. Still holding the bottle cap in his hand. You always don't let me get what I want. It was like talking to the bottle cap, but also like talking to the entire room. Shut up. That's what he said too. After a while, Zhang Yan's snoring could be heard again in the room. The bottle cap had been squeezed into one piece without anyone noticing. Throw it as far away from him as possible. In his dream, a young man wrote the following sentence in his composition: I am born cowardly, and all joy is mixed with ominousness. Hie Hie and Hie Hie walked side by side on the road. He moved back slightly and slowed down his pace. After all, I don't know where to go next. There's just one problem now. His sister has been staring at him ever since she left the house. If he hadn't been pulling, I would have hit a pedestrian passing by. Hie Hie forced a smile and looked at Hie Hie. It was still difficult for him to laugh even when nothing was happening. Hie, what's wrong? Are you scared? Hie Hie just realized that he had been unconscious for more than an hour. That means it's only been this long since the incident at the clinic. For an ordinary high school girl like Hie, encountering such a scumbag and seeing such a scene, it's normal to still be afraid at this moment. The more he thought about it, the more worried he became, and he couldn't help but put his left hand on Hie Hie's head and touched it stiffly. It's okay. Brother will protect you and mom and dad in the future. He didn't just say it as an emergency measure, he was thinking this way. Unexpectedly, Hie Hie suddenly jumped up and touched Hie Hie's head. Smiling like a child who had just pulled a successful prank. Hey, not at all. Then he walked forward and left a sentence. Brother is still the same as before, so handsome. Hie Hie was actually a little embarrassed and rubbed his nose with his index finger. Follow quietly behind. But the further Hie Hie walked, the more he felt something was wrong. After walking for about 10 minutes, the road seemed to be getting more and more unfamiliar. But we dare not say it, nor do we dare to ask. If you ask, everything will be exposed. A person who grew up and lived here for more than 10 years suddenly doesn't know the way. Ahem, I don't believe it even if I say it myself. At this time, Hie Hie seemed to notice Hie Hie's doubts. Then he said oh, touched the back of his head and said, I forgot to tell my brother that teacher Zhang called my parents when you were unconscious. Mom asked us to buy a light bulb from the boutique behind the school before we go back. As he spoke, he pointed to a small storefront opposite. Hie Hie looked in the direction he was looking, but he was not looking at the store, but at the one behind it. Shilan Middle School at this moment, a good-looking boy with delicate features, slightly droopy eyes, who was walking and reading a comic book suddenly bumped into Hie Hie's shoulder. Both of them were stunned by something or other and were knocked to one side and startled. But at the same time, they could all feel it the moment they touched. The blood has begun to cheer. My heart was shaken. Chapter 27. The comic book fell to the ground with the impact, and a card popped out. When Hie Hie picked it up, the boy had already run away. Only an apology was left in my ears. Hie Hie was extremely puzzled and stared blankly in the direction where the young man disappeared. Just at the moment when it collided with it, he seemed to see again the bronze pillar reaching up to the sky. A roar above the impenetrable fog even broke through the clouds and was about to descend into this world. The restless blood was telling him with great certainty. There was something inside that person's body just now. It actually made him angry, even, fear. The fear that evaporates from the blood. But it was only for a moment. This feeling disappeared like a summer shower. He wasn't sure what the feeling just now was about. But at least he knew one thing. That boy who should be about the same age as me. It's definitely not an ordinary person. He even wanted to catch up and get to the bottom of it. Because at this moment a name popped up in his mind. A name that guided him here. But he can't. My sister just went through all that, even though she looks heartless. But he could hear it. She was trembling a little when she spoke. Although she seemed to be trying hard to suppress it. But she is still a high school girl after all. Let's go, Hie, and buy some light bulbs. Hie smiled and waved his right hand, asking Hie to come over and cross the road. Then he noticed the card in his hand. He has white hair and white pants, is shirtless, and has a strange rune engraved on his chest. The King of Fighters. It seemed to be the same character that he used when fighting against Yuan Zhizheng in Shuyi Internet Cafe. Hie Hie couldn't help but smile and put it in his bag. What a coincidence. I'll give it back to him next time I meet him. Oh, but there is no such coincidence in the world. There are millions of people in this city. But if it's really him, we'll meet soon then. The brother and sister just walked across the zebra crossing. At this time, Hie Hie seemed to have thought of something and his face became nervous. Leaf, I have a question. Hie Hie turned around and saw that Hie Hie seemed to be a little embarrassed and helpless. I couldn't help but feel a little confused. Do you have any money left? This sentence made Hie Hie stay in Bungbu. Motioned for Hie to have a look. Then she pulled up her skirt. It's so funny, there's no money for packaging. Then there was the brother and sister leaning against the billboard at the bus stop, holding their foreheads with their hands and looking worried. It is true that a penny can make many heroes fall. Hie Hie sighed helplessly. Yezi, did Mom and Dad say anything about buying a light bulb? Hie Hie slowly raised her head and thought about it. It seems like I need to change the light in your room. The lights in that room really needed changing. Hie Hie couldn't help but touch his pocket again. Recognize the reality instantly. But it's not invisible. They applauded and thought it was extremely wonderful. He suddenly felt that he still had his own way of comforting himself. Yezi, let's go home. The light in my room can still be used for a long time. Don't waste this money. Hie Hie said ouch and followed quietly behind. Fortunately, I remembered the way out from Zhang Yan's place. Otherwise Hie Hie would have been exposed from here on. But this is not a solution. What should I do if I arrive downstairs at Zhang Yan's rental house? I don't know the way home. Hie Hie turned around and looked at Hie Hie behind him. His head was lowered, and his hands were resting on his back with fingers crossed. The next step is into a grid. It seems that he is not in a good mood. At least not as bad as before. Hie Hie slowly slowed down his pace and walked with Hie Hie. Just like her, I walked one square at a time. Everyone is speechless. 198199200. Hie Hie walked while counting the number of squares he had walked in his mind. Yezi, who had been noisy since the first time they met, was now silent. I'm not quite used to it. Hie Hie can deduce formulas, solve difficult problems, and face off against dragon guards. But I just can't understand girls' thoughts. Just like the restaurant where I used to work part-time in my old world. Someone gave him a letter, the general meaning of which was to ask him to pay more attention to and help her. So Hie Hie pointed out the mistakes in the letter format to her. Then the girl ran away crying for no apparent reason. But I helped her as she wished. Yezi, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had any money until I got there. Hie Hie finally spoke up and gave what he thought was the most likely reason. Then apologize. It's never wrong to apologize, right? But Hie Hie's expression seemed to become even gloomier. Hie Hie was stunned for a moment. No way, sir, you can't even apologize. Brother, it's always like this. She seemed to say something, but Hie Hie didn't hear it at all. It's all on my mind. Why doesn't this work? As she was thinking, she found herself being a step behind Hie Hie without realizing it. Haha, I'm finally home. Before I knew it, I had arrived at the door of my home. To be precise, it's in front of the house on the first floor. Hie Hie stretched and her mood seemed to have returned to normal. A lot of things happened today. She suddenly smiled and looked at Hie Hie, with a wink in her right eye. Then extend the thumb and little finger of your left hand and close the other 3 fingers. Hands raised towards him. But you can't tell your parents, right? There is inquiry and some nostalgia in his eyes. That's it, a pinky promise, right? I think I played it when I was a kid. It represents commitment and perseverance. Of course I can't let my parents know what happened today. Even if you say it out loud, it will only add extra worries and burdens to them. After all, this is just my own consideration. But fortunately, Leaf now also has the same idea. What's wrong with making a pinky promise and stamping a document? So Hie Hie stretched out his right hand and put his thumb on her thumb. Hook your pinky finger over hers. Then the two of them need to shake it twice to secure the oath. Hie Hie smiled, touched her head and walked towards the passage inside the iron gate. However, he did not notice that Hie Hie was still maintaining the pink and stamp gesture at this moment. His eyes looked at his still raised left hand. Then he laughed. The smile is a little sad, a little. Feeling lost. A hook like this counts, right? It's agreed. I can't say anything. Hie Hie slowly put down his hands and looked at Hie Hie who was waving at him in the corridor. Just like in the 3rd grade. Next to this iron gate. I had a fight with other kids and got a tear on the arm of my school uniform. I was afraid that my parents would see me and get angry, so I had to squat outside. The cold wave had just passed, but the weather still seemed to be mixed with ice particles. The cold wind blew into the clothes through the hole. It's very cold. It was my brother who saw me when he came home. Then he quietly took out needle and thread from home. The brother and sister sat on the small steps in front of the glass door next door. While the brother was mending his clothes, the sister put her hands obediently on his knees. Brother, can you please not tell mom and dad about my clothes being torn in a fight? My brother pulled the needle out of the clothes and then inserted it again, very smoothly. But he did not comment, but asked, did you win? My sister immediately became confident, raised her little head and answered proudly. Of course I won. Neither of them could beat me. The brother bit off the last piece of thread, then touched his sister's head and smiled. Then I won't say anything. The younger sister seemed unconvinced and looked at her brother with suspicion. Raise your left hand, extend your thumb and little finger, and close the other fingers. Then you make a pinky promise with me. My brother was amused and stretched out his left hand. Hook her little finger with your thumb. Hook your pinky finger around her thumb. Let's make a promise and stick to it for 100 years. Chapter 28. It's a done deal. It won't change in 100 years. Hie Hie looked at her brother who seemed a little confused at the end of the passage. A bright smile. He took a big step back and ran towards him. Yet, when has my brother ever lied to me? When the two returned home, they found that only Zhang Xinjian was at home sitting in front of the sewing machine, sewing insoles. Seeing this, Hie Hie squatted beside her. Help her pass the cardboard and loofah. You will each choose 2 pairs from here later. The remaining 3 pairs will be given to your dad. The insoles of his shoes wore out faster at the construction site. Zhang Xinjian rubbed her eyes with her wrist and pointed to a few pairs of insoles on the edge of the sewing machine table. The transition from spring to summer is coming, so it's not wrong to prepare early. She put one hand on her waist and looked at her trophy proudly. The brother and sister each took 2 pairs. Then there were only 3 pairs left. An arithmetic problem that couldn't be simpler. Mom, it's yours. At this time, Hie Hie asked the key point of this arithmetic problem. Zhang Xinjian stretched and moved her body. Then he said with a sneer, of course it's already been put away. How can the cook be left hungry? How can the logistics staff be left cold? Seeing this, Hie Hie smiled and ran behind Zhang Xinjian to massage her shoulders and back. Even though she knew it very well. My mother never had insoles in her shoes. Hie Hie took out his cell phone and checked the time. April 25, 2009 at 10:42 p.m. It was already pitch dark outside. The street lights from the building opposite could barely cast some light onto the sunflowers outside. It's very late. Mom, isn't Dad coming back yet? Hie Hie couldn't help but ask. Zhang Xinjian looked at the round wall clock hanging next to the refrigerator. There was some pain in his eyes. If you haven't come back by this time, it must be some urgent work. Overtime pay may be higher. Maybe he won't be back until 2 or 3 in the morning. As he said this, he couldn't help but glance at the dandelions in the yard that were illuminated by several beams of light. I don't know if you've eaten yet. When it comes to the last sentence. Very quiet, very concerned. Very helpless. The back figure appeared in Hie Hie's mind. My nose suddenly felt sore for no reason. Mom, is there any food left? I'll bring some to Dad. He wanted to go and see, to understand this man. Zhang Xinjian couldn't help but pause for a moment, then smiled with relief. Okay. Then he went to the kitchen to heat up the food. There are cabbage stewed with vermicelli, scrambled eggs with tomatoes, and shredded pork with green peppers. Didn't seem to eat much. Hie Hie's eyes widened as she watched. They are all her and her brother's favorite dishes. But she had already eaten. I originally said that I would prepare a good meal for you when you came back today, but Teacher Zhang cut it short. Why did Teacher Zhang suddenly invite you to dinner today? And you are not allowed to refuse. The 3 dishes took up half of the single-layer stainless steel lunchbox. The remaining space is filled with rice. Then put the lid back on. Your father is working at the construction site behind Shuxiang Mingyuan. Don't go the wrong way. Hie Hie's ears directly filtered out Zhang Xinjian's questions. He grabbed the lunchbox and walked out. It's so funny, he doesn't even know how to explain it. Okay, I'll go then. Fortunately, Hie Hie knew this community. I saw this today when I went to buy light bulbs with Yezi. It is less than 100 meters behind Shilan Middle School. What's interesting is the entrance to the community. Written in big white letters on the wall on the left are the words, build a new look for the city and create a harmonious and happy home together. On the right wall, it is written in black characters, if you are lazy, you will easily violate the rules, if you indulge yourself, you will forget your roots, Book of Rites, Book of Music. This is because there is a mountain god temple on the hill next to the community. There was a year. One day in 1991 to be exact. The city was inexplicably filled with thunder. It was clearly afternoon, but the view was as dark as if the world was about to end. It seemed as if a thunder dragon was rolling in the clouds. It could strike down at any time. But in the end it didn't happen. But one day after that, some people said that he saw a figure standing in the sky just above the mountain temple that day. With a gentle wave of his right hand, thousands of thunderclouds in the sky instantly dissipated. Some people believed it, thinking it was the mountain god who protected the city and saved it from disaster. Some people don't believe it because they think there are no gods or demons in the world and everything should follow science. Even if they can't come up with a scientific explanation at all. Just like the former could not produce any evidence that gods and demons existed in the world. This struggle thus continued in this city for 18 years. Until now, the mountain temple stands on the route of urban planning. As a result, differences and conflicts broke out again. One is about construction, the other is about faith. The stalemate between the two parties has caused the construction period to be postponed by 2 weeks. Hey? Ask Hie Hie how he knows this? This is because the areas on the left and right walls except for the large characters are covered with petitions from both camps. We can deduce the reasons by connecting the above scattered points. Dad works there. Does it mean that he chose to stand on the side of construction? When this question appeared in Hie Hie's mind, he smiled helplessly and bitterly. Building, faith. Worth a few cents. Is what is built for you? Is what you believe in the gospel that has been given to you? Hie Hie walked around for a while before finding the road to the back of the community. The temple still stands on the top of the mountain. The foot of the mountain has basically been hollowed out. In a foundation pit of about several thousand square meters, there are still many people wearing yellow hats working. Hie Hie searched for a long time in a slightly higher place before he found Hie Fukeo. At the moment he was pushing a cart. Step on a slanted wooden board. But when I pushed the board halfway, I couldn't push it any further. Hie Fukeo stopped halfway, lowered his head slightly and gasped. Sweat poured out like a faucet. My head is a little dizzy from hunger. But he had to finish it. This one night's wages are enough to cover 3 or 4 days' wages. So he kept forcing himself to exert more force, and even let out a muffled roar. But the sand on the lala cart seemed to be stuffed with iron. It's ridiculously heavy. He couldn't help but sigh, I am really old. At this moment, the cart in his hands began to slide upwards by itself. Look up and take a look. It's Hie Hie. Hie Hie grabbed the front of the cart with both hands and walked to the upper floor. It seems quite easy. Hie Fukeo smiled and used the grey towel hanging around his neck. Wiped the sweat from his forehead. Hey, he's worthy of being my son. He looks exactly like me when I was young. Outside the community, on the bus stop seat beside the road. Hie Fukeo ate his dinner voraciously. The screen on the billboard behind me just flashed, 0000 year, you've worked so hard. You should go back soon, otherwise your mother will be worried. Hie Fukeo had just swallowed a mouthful of rice, and when he saw that there was still some rice on the chopsticks, he licked it again. Then he put the lunchbox on his lap, patted Hie Hie's shoulder and gave him instructions. And Hie Hie just looked at the lunchbox. 2/3 of the food was consumed in just 3 minutes. Then he smiled and said to Hie Fukeo, Dad, eat slowly. I'll go back with you later and try to finish the work before 1 o'clock. Hie Fukeo was choked just after he finished speaking. Ahem. Then he quickly unscrewed the opener of his army green transparent bottle. It took me several sips to recover. Hie Hie patted Hie Fukeo's back gently to help him calm down. Hifukeo put down the bottle and let out a long sigh. Then he immediately turned around and looked at Hie Hie. Just as he opened his mouth to say something, he was interrupted. I think we should go back together. Mom won't worry. Hifukeo was stunned when he heard this. But he still had to refuse. Listen to Dad. Have you forgotten what the doctor said? With your disease, you must not do any strenuous exercise. When saying this, giving this reason, there is clearly a bit of guilt in Yunjiao's pretended anger. Hie Hie said nothing and just stared at Hifukeo. What the eyes tell is determination and persistence. The father and son just stared at each other. But in the end, Hifukeo was the first to relax. Okay, but you can only watch from the sidelines. Hie Hie seemed not satisfied with the result. He raised his head slightly and thought for a moment. Okay. When the time comes, I can help out here and there. No, it's still the same. Hifukeo sighed, his son was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on his face. Then he continued to eat. While eating, he also picked up a few pieces of shredded meat for Hie Hie to eat. It's really delicious. At this time, a man came from the street on the right. To be precise, it was shaking. There was a cart behind him, and on it there seemed to be a machine full of drawers. Every few steps he took he seemed to take a step backwards. All the hands and feet are moving constantly. Like a ghost walking in the night. The right hand also appears to be holding a brown paper bag. After walking for a long time, I finally arrived in front of the father and son. He still didn't stop. The head, hands, and feet were all waving and shaking in a random manner. Hie Hie didn't feel scared, just confused. Just when I was about to ask him if there was anything wrong, Hifukeo stood up. He just patted the man in front of him on the shoulder and said with a smile. Closing up the stall? It looks like it will be late today. The man's coat fell down because of the shaking of his body. He seemed to be trying to restrain himself and put on his clothes. But my hands seem too far away from my clothes. I can't reach it. Seeing this, Hifukeo pulled up the man's clothes and then helped him zip up his clothes. Red, sweet potato, the last one, for you, your son. He seemed to be slurring his words, but one could still make out what he was saying. When Hie Hie heard that he was mentioned, he stood up consciously. No, no. You are doing this to me, right? Hifukeo simply shook his head to refuse, and there seemed to be some intimidation in his words. But when the man heard this, he leaned forward. He threw the brown bag in his hand at Hifukeo's feet. Then he ran towards the cart parked nearby as if escaping. The corners of his mouth twitched, as if he was smiling. The faded bag on her waist trembled with her back. Hifukeo picked up the brown bag on the ground helplessly. The sweet potatoes inside are still hot. Hie Hie watched the man slowly escape away. Hifukeo had already peeled the sweet potato. It was handed to Hie Hie with a flyer inside. Hie Hie stretched out his hand and caught the sweet potato. I have something to ask, but I don't know how to ask it. Hifukeo asked Hie Hie to have a taste. So he took a bite. Very sweet. Very sweet. This is what Hie Hie thinks. Hifukeo smiled and looked towards the intersection where the man had disappeared. So what kind of person do you think he is? Hie Hie didn't rush to answer when he heard this question. Instead, he took another bite of the sweet potato in his hand. Then he laughed too. Follow your father's gaze and look towards the intersection. There was admiration in his eyes. He is by no means a cripple. He's just a guy dancing in misery. Chapter 29. The father and son arrived at the door of their home at around 1 a.m. Hie Hie's trouser legs and the corners of his clothes were more or less stained with sand and dust. Not to mention Hifukeo. The cement on the clothes is more like their original color. The two of them went down the stairs quietly, afraid to make any noise. He tiptoed out the key and turned it gently. Click even so. The sound made when a key passes through the keyhole. Still like a salute exploding in the darkness. They both couldn't help but take a long breath. Listen with bated breath. There seemed to be no sound. Then they smiled at each other. Hifukeo walked in first, and it was pitch black inside. But he paused. Then for some reason it stopped not far from the door. Staring blankly to the right. Hie Hie couldn't help but follow his gaze. The street lights outside the partition wall flashed dazzling light. From time to time, a few bunches would fall into the flower field which was one level lower. The sunflowers raised their heads high, as if looking further into the sky. The roses surrounding it hugged their bright red skirts tightly and bloomed on their own. And at this moment, they all seem to be gathering towards the center of this land. It seems like there is sunshine there. With Verdandi who loves them deeply. The goddess who rules the present. 2 chairs in the center of the flower field. My sister rested her head gently on my mother's shoulder. Seems to have fallen asleep. A few rays of light fell upon them. It reflects a silvery white outline. Holy and long-lasting. A girl came to see the dragon lantern, and her sister-in-law dressed up for her. Let down your black hair and comb it into a dragon and phoenix style, a red coat with a white silk skirt, lightweight double-breasted cape. Songs from hundreds of years ago are being played today, transcending time and space. It seems to be this small world. Dip it into 4 parts dusk, 3 parts moonlight, 2 parts tipsy, and 1 part pampering. I can almost see my mother's faint smile. With my sister's peaceful sleeping face. Zhang Xinjian would stretch out her left hand from time to time to brush away the strands of hair that were falling around Hie Hie's eyes. They seemed unaware of the father and son's return home. But they were all waiting for the father and son to come home. A smile appeared on Hie Fukao's lips at some point. There is some kind of happiness in his eyes. But for Hie Hie, such a scene seems extremely unreal. It's like in a dream, in the sky. Isolated island in the desert. If there is no excessive joy, there will be no extreme sorrow, right? But at this moment, there is no doubt about this picture. Right in front of you. Still in sight. Just like we can always see the sun when we fly around it. Like the ups and downs of clouds on a midsummer night. You can see the sunrise and the moon set in an instant. Hie Hie didn't know what his expression was at the moment. But he knew it would be good in the end. Maybe, he was smiling. Hie Fukao walked to the door and closed it. Then he knocked on the door gently. Boom boom boom. Zhang Xinjian turned around only then. Then there was a shock. Ah! After the knock on the door, 2 figures suddenly stood in the darkness. How can I not be scared? But fortunately, I could still tell that they were the 2 from my family. Otherwise, the knife for cutting vegetables placed by the doorstep. Maybe it's about to fly over. Zhang Xinjian gently tapped Hie Hie's forehead. After she woke up, she slowly stood up. Then he picked up the machete and was about to throw it at the 2 men near the door. You 2 walked and opened the door without making any sound? You scared me. Look at the knife. Then he exerted force with his right hand, and the sword seemed to be about to fly out. Both the father and the son shrank back in fear. This actually stimulated Hie Fukao's Ren and Du meridians. The speed of speaking is more than 100 times faster. Honey, honey. My son and I thought you were all asleep, so we came in quietly in case we disturbed you. And the light wasn't on, so. He finished the entire sentence almost within 2 seconds, and his voice became louder and trembling as he spoke further. Fortunately, the big knife in Zhang Xinjian's hand drew a bright moon in the air and then stopped. But where the tip of the knife fell, a gust of wind burst out. Electricity is free. Go to sleep. She didn't ask why Hie Hie came back now. Because she understands her child, she already has the result in her heart. Following the order, Hie Fukao hurried back to the room. Hie Hie was still sitting there at this time, with her chin resting on the backrest of the chair. With eyes closed. He seemed a little confused after just waking up. I couldn't help but press my right hand on my stomach. His eyebrows and eyes were slightly furrowed. There is no greater sorrow than feeling dead in one's heart. Talking to myself like in a dream, I'm hungry. I finally fell asleep. At this time, a smell came from somewhere. It seems sweet and warm. It smells so good. Hie Hie's eyes suddenly opened. Only then did I realize that there was a roasted sweet potato in front of me. Catch it quickly. Only then did he notice Hie Hie who handed it to him. A sweet smile. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped. Hie Hie raised his index finger to his mouth. Lie. Then he pointed to his parents' room. Hie Hie immediately understood what he meant and freed up one hand that was holding the roasted sweet potato. He gave a thumbs up to show that he understood. Then he started eating the sweet potatoes. His face was filled with satisfaction and joy. Hie Hie also sat on the chair next to him. Hie Hie pushed the sweet potato to his mouth. He just smiled and opened his right hand. There is a very small piece inside. Just toss it lightly and put it into your mouth. Only then did Hie Hie feel relieved and started to bite the food. That piece was actually broken off from the place where Hie Hie had taken 2 bites. Just try to break it as small as possible. The brother and sister just sat there without saying anything. But it makes people feel inexplicably that the years are peaceful and quiet. After 2 inexplicable flashes, all the lights on the other side of the wall went dim. No more light shines into the flower fields. The moonlight seemed even brighter at this time. It's time to go to bed. I am so tired today, there are so many things to sort out. When Hie Hie heard what Hie Hie said, she whispered good night. Then he ran back to the room. I'm confident I can sleep until this time tomorrow. But Hie Hie himself did not move and still sat on the chair. His head was tilted slightly upward, his eyes closed. From this moment on, everything around seemed to be stagnant in darkness. Not even the wind could blow into this heaviness. Ha! He let out a long breath. This home is really nice. Then he stood up all of a sudden, looking at the crescent moon hanging far in the sky, his eyes filled with loneliness and courage. But I have something I must do. Kill the dragon. Then destroy everything that would threaten her. At this time, in an economic community in Yuking, a young boy came home and locked himself in his room. I unexpectedly didn't play any games today. Only QQ is open on the computer interface. A chat box with a panda avatar. The messages exchanged only stopped at the last sentence sent by the boy. Perhaps. The boy curled up in the seat. The snoring behind him annoyed him a little. Everything that I just experienced seemed to be still happening to me. He bumped into someone. At that moment, the blood seemed to be boiling. An indescribable feeling rushed through my body at a speed faster than the speed of light. He didn't know the man at all. It can even be said that I didn't even see the man's appearance clearly just now. But I don't know why. But the feeling I get inside is like that of an old friend I have known for too long. And enemy? He couldn't quite figure out what this feeling was. Over the past 18 years. Almost 18 years to be exact. He had never felt anything special about anything he had encountered so far. At one point I even wondered if I was an emotionally insensitive person. But this time, his heart was still beating wildly. At the moment of touch. I really want to hug that person. Then. Kill him. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at the still-lit screen and the conversation on the screen. Slowly lowered his head and buried his face in his arms. It was so light that it seemed to be speaking to the air. What's wrong with me? Chapter 30. Year, Yezi. It's time to eat. Hie Hie slowly opened his eyes, picked up Nokia and checked the time. April 26, 2009, 11:37 am. The room was dark, not a single ray of light could penetrate even in the early morning. Hie Hie opened his eyes blankly with his arms across his forehead. Then he couldn't help but close his eyes again. For some reason, he dreamed of the golden dragon eye flashing in the infinite darkness again last night. And this time, he seemed even closer to him. But this time, when Hie Hie looked at the dragon pupil, he felt an inexplicable fear. Not deep, but real. This made him inexplicably irritated. I got up late. When Hie Hie opened the bedroom door, he happened to meet Hie Hie passing by. Then I was laughed at for no reason. Ha ha ha, my brother didn't get up earlier than me today. Even though I still look sleepy. Oh, there is a yellow-white thing on the right cheek. Hie Hie quickly pointed at his own face, then at hers. At first she was a little confused and followed Hie Hie's instructions and touched her face. Yesterday's baked sweet potatoes. Wow, did I eat so sloppily last night? It seems so. Hie Hie quickly turned around and ran away. Her image as a cute, polite, and beautiful girl suddenly collapsed. But one thing to say. That baked sweet potato is really delicious. Just thinking about that taste makes me hungry again. Hie Hie quickly went to the bathroom to wash up and get ready to eat at any time. Hie Hie couldn't help but smile when he saw this. The irritation caused by the previous dream disappeared instantly. When I walked into the bathroom, the door was closed. There was a blue toothbrush cup at the door, with a blue toothbrush with toothpaste squeezed in it lying horizontally on the cup. There was a blue handkerchief hanging on the door handle. You can tell at first glance that it was prepared for Hie Hie. So Hie Hie took it and walked to the steps beside the yard, squatted down and started brushing his teeth. It seems to be a toothpaste with the flavor of pear. This smell really makes me smile. At this time, Zhang Xinjian walked out of the kitchen, holding in her left and right hands some scrambled eggs with tomatoes and shredded pork with green peppers, which were still quite a lot from yesterday. Yezi, Yeer, come and eat after you finish brushing your teeth. Hie Hie quickly said and brushed his teeth faster. Hie Hie was different. She just ran out with the toothbrush in her hand. Mom, is the rice cooked enough? I want to eat 3 big bowls today. Zhang Xinjian looked at her and was so angry that she laughed. His right index finger was placed on her forehead, looking as if he was disappointed in her. Enough, enough, enough. Wipe the bubbles from your mouth first. Hie Hie then realized that she had not wiped her face yet, so she quickly ran back to wash it. Hie Hie had also washed his face by then. When he went to the bathroom to clean himself, his sister had already sat down at the dining table, crying for food. So he hurried to the dining table. What if it's too late and my sister starves to death? There were only 2 people at the table. It seems that Hie Fukao has already gone to work. Sorry mom, I got up so late. Hie Hie had just picked up the bowl and hadn't started yet when he felt he should say this. Zhang Xinjian just gave him a piece of egg, then looked at him and smiled. Why are you telling this to mom? You just got home yesterday and you and your dad did so many things, and you slept so late, it's normal to be sleepy. But you have to promise me one thing. When she said this, her expression was somewhat serious, and her tone sounded like an order, but also like, pray. Don't do heavy work like you did last night anymore. Even if it's for your parents, Yezi, protect yourself. Got it. At this point, Hie Hie inexplicably felt that Zhang Xinjian's expression at this moment was very similar to Hie Fukao's last night. Even Hie Hie stopped eating and drinking. Look at Hie Hie. It seemed as if she was also waiting for his answer. In fact, Hie Hie knew very well what they were worried about. He also thought about telling them that he had recovered from his illness. But he can't. Before that, he died of a heart attack, had faked his death, and had amnesia. Either fact may be a heavier pain for them. Not to mention, his eternity is no more. So Hie Hie put on a smile and said, I will. Hie Hie then smiled brightly and continued eating. While eating, he couldn't help humming a clear tune. Zhang Xinjian just gave him a look. The sound disappeared immediately. Seeing this, Hie Hie even pretended to zip her mouth shut. Then he mumbled something and I didn't know what he was saying. Only by unlocking the Morse code and the Da Vinci code can we find out what she said. Mom, aren't you smiling too? Well, or maybe as her mother of 15 years I can also decipher the meaning. Seeing this, Zhang Xinjian couldn't help but hold her forehead, then slid to the left towards Hie Hie's closed mouth. So the zipper was opened. She took several breaths as if she was short of oxygen. Then continue eating. By the way, your class's special spring outing to Japan is over today, right? Zhang Xinjian picked up a mouthful of rice and put it into her mouth, and asked this question casually. Hie Hie just put the piece of egg into his mouth. Then I heard this question. I was so scared that I almost vomited. Ahem, this, that. Which one? How does he know? But you have to hold on. It's like a true or false question, with 2 choices for the answer. Unless you are asked to choose between a check or a cross, you insist on drawing a smiley face or something. Yes, yes, a 5-day spring outing. Hie Hie held the bowl and pushed several mouthfuls of rice into his mouth, filling it up. His eyes were fixed on the food on the table the whole time. Maybe letting yourself watch will help you calm down. Zhang Xinjian didn't seem to notice anything unusual about Hie Hie and nodded slightly. Then he suddenly paused, as if he thought of something. The movements of his hands seemed a little slow. Speaking of which, our year will also be taking the college entrance examination soon. When I asked you before, you said you didn't have a college you wanted to go to. Having said that, she finally put down the bowl and chopsticks in her hands. Looking at Hie Hie with a little seriousness. Now, do you have it? Seeing this, Hie Hie also put down the bowl and chopsticks in his hands. There was great certainty in his words. Yes, and I want to submit my study abroad application today. Zhang Xinjian was obviously very surprised. I was so frightened that I couldn't speak clearly. Study abroad? Do you mean go to a university abroad? Which school? It actually made Hie Hie stop again. There was no longer any relaxation on his expression, and the meat he had just picked up with the chopsticks fell onto the table with the chopsticks. Bang! The atmosphere suddenly became solemn. There are always a few beams of sunlight from the yard that shine through the hall. falling on the table, falling on the shoulders. It fell onto the end of the pair of fallen chopsticks, reflecting a dazzling glow. This made Hie Hie a little dazzled. A little sour. Hie Hie just sat upright, facing the side of Hie Hie and Zhang Xinjian. Castle College. This college is located in the suburbs of Chicago in the Great Lakes region of Illinois, USA. It is a sister school of the University of Chicago. Zhang Xinjian felt that her son seemed a little different at this time. When did it start? It's like a little lion about to embark on a journey, with its destination far away, just to create its own story. There is a yearning in the eyes, something that I want to pursue. What are you going to learn? She was still a little hesitant, unable to make up her mind at the moment. Studying ancient reptiles is the university's flagship major. And if I can reach their exemption score, I can go to this university for free. I have faith. Zhang Xinjian looked at the determination and yearning in her children's eyes. She knew that she should let him go. Because he finally got what he wanted to pursue. Before this, he was so pitiful. Always smiling, always looking at others, always. He couldn't see himself. Chapter 31. Good. Having said this, she had passed this hurdle. No mother will stand in the way of her children's desired destination. The chopsticks that had fallen on the table had been picked up, and Hie Hie was eating quietly and steadily. Chew slowly. For a moment, one could even hear the sound of teeth grinding and chopsticks clanging against porcelain bowls at the dinner table. Brother, can't I not go? This is what Hie Hie said. Looking at the chopsticks that had been placed on the bowl, the fingers of both hands under the table moved in a disorderly manner. The shawl hair covered the side of her face. I couldn't see what expression it was. I have to go. That rainy night that almost brought down the sky. Thunder and lightning roared with wind. The earth and the gods trembled. The girl fell into the deep red well. A pure white monster inside held her in its hands. The bloody teeth on the ferocious face seemed to be able to tear everything apart, and the golden eyes flashed with a despairing power. Hie Hie gently placed his hand on Hie Hie's head. The warm breath conveys perseverance. There are things I need to do over there. Hie Hie's body seemed to be trembling slightly. She nodded after all. But after finishing the meal, he helped carry the plates to the kitchen and then went back to his room. Hie Hie stayed in the kitchen to help Zhang Xinjian clean the dishes. When your father comes back, you should also tell him about this matter. He should support you. While speaking, he did not stop, and carefully wiped the grease on the dishes. I'll give you your ID and student ID later. You can make copies of them when the time comes. You should also need them for the application form you mail. There were only 3 pairs of dishes and chopsticks in total, and they were washed quickly. Zhang Xinjian wiped her hands on her apron, making sure that there was no water on them before she reached into the pockets of her apron to search. I flipped through it and took out one, or maybe it would be more accurate to say one. A red 100 yuan huaxia coin rolled up to be as thin as a toothpick. Take this $100. I don't know how much international mail will cost, so it's better to bring some extra just in case. But Hie didn't reach out to take it, he just stood there straight. Then he bowed almost 90 degrees to Zhang Xinjian. At this moment, a black ant was crawling on the ground. There is a grain of rice in his mouth. Something that is several times or even dozens of times bigger than him. Walking towards the distance step by step. No one knows where it will go. Either return home safely or be trampled to death on the road. Who knows? Who would care? Mom, I don't know how to tell you, but I want to tell you this. I will protect myself well. He is lying. Don't let yourself get hurt. Still lying. I come back every holiday. Unless something happens that is beyond human understanding. It just so happened that he went there for those guys who were beyond the scope of human understanding. Zhang Xinjian straightened Hie with both hands. Then he stuffed the 100 yuan in his hand into his pocket. Mom believes in you. 4 words. Not too much, not too little, but heavy enough to nearly suffocate Hie. Okay. There's still more than a month left before the college entrance exam. Study hard, and if you fail, I'll show you how I'll deal with you. Zhang Xinjian suddenly patted Hie's shoulder with force. It seemed like he was cheering Hie on. It also seems like he is using this to hold back some emotions that are about to burst forth. After saying that, he picked up the basket next to the refrigerator. I'll go buy some flour and make you some noodle soup this afternoon. Hie watched her slowly open the door and go upstairs. I really don't know what to do. He even wanted to explain to them everything that had happened to him. Because they are family. Because it's family. Isn't that exactly why? He should protect them even better. Any action or change that might cause them harm. These are all things he should absolutely avoid. When I turned around, I realized that I had already taken several steps towards the door. And under your feet, there is a grain of rice that has been crushed. Kazuichi just. The ant is still struggling with death. Who would grieve or feel sad for such a tiny life? Perhaps Wally, who represents nature, would? Oh, forgot. Wasn't it he who coined the concept of survival of the fittest? He picked up the ant that had curled up into a ball with his hands. Then walked towards the flower fields. Place it on the brightest rose petal. When turning around to leave. But then I saw the ant unfold its body again. It's like a rebirth, like a transformation. Escape into the pistol. He paused, then laughed. Unruly and resolute. Laugh at your own troubles, laugh at your own groundless fears. It's like laughing for the ant. It escaped in such a funny and decisive way. Like the starry sky being chased by the scorching sun. Like the surface of the sea about to be touched by the sky. But fortunately, it escaped, didn't it? Even under eternity all are at large. Even if you have to struggle too long in powerlessness. But he escaped. Isn't that good? If it doesn't die, it can still live with enough food and drink. It sounds like nonsense, but isn't it exactly what too many people want to maintain now? Is it even the future we long for? Snap! Hie Hie suddenly slapped himself on the right cheek. The force was so great that it even caused him to have slight tinnitus. I am much more sober now, and I know what to do next. Suddenly I remembered what he had said, expressing his disappointment in his achievements. He touched the back of his head. Am I really that negative? Thinking of this, I actually smiled somewhat bitterly. In fact, if someone has ever tried to suddenly disappear, I hope to hear someone calling my voice. Turn out. Oh, no one really cares about me. Then after that, when he appeared again. One who is incapable of understanding the joys and sorrows of the world. A place that slowly carries the dust from thousands of dark corners, mood. It will come into being. And this may be negativity. Bang, bang, bang. Hie Hie knocked on Hie Hie's door. Maybe she felt she had pretended to be calm enough. The response was frank enough. But leaving aside Zhang Xinjian, even Hie Hie could see that something was wrong with her. Yes, can we talk? No echo. Want to go out and play? No echo. Want to eat? Brother will treat you. Still no response. Hie Hie then knew that the problem was quite serious. I couldn't even coax her into going out for a meal. Based on my judgment over the past 2 days, he must be a foodie, right? At this time, Hie Hie seemed to think of something. I picked up the family heirloom bag and went to the street. When I came back, the bag seemed to be filled with a lot of things and looked bulging. After opening it, I found out. In addition to some old things, there was a box of medicine, a candied haws, a baked sweet potatoes. It is worth mentioning that Hie Hie bought the medicine at that clinic. Not voluntary. Instead, he was invited in by a man wearing gold-rimmed glasses and with freckles on his nose. The fat doctor seemed to be gone. This person actually wants to give the medicine away for free. Hie Hie took it and looked at it, and it was exactly the 2 boxes before. Because there are signs of falling on the box. Ask this person why. He just said, because you are the god of wealth. Hie Hie was not interested at all and just gave him the money and asked him to give the change. The man didn't say anything else and gave the change obediently. The receipt is 30 yuan, and the change is 70 yuan. This is the report from the cash machine. Hie Hie took these things and walked to the door of Hie Hie's bedroom. Yes, my brother just went out for a walk, I ran into the uncle selling sweet potatoes again, and then I bought another one, and it was better than the one yesterday. Sweeter. Hie Hie paused when saying the last 2 words, with a slightly surprised tone. To be honest, if I hadn't been so hesitant. He believed it himself. Chapter 32. Click. The door seemed to be open. Hie Hie vaguely heard 2 sets of hurried footsteps inside. A helpless smile. It seems that roasted sweet potatoes are more attractive. Gently push the door open and go in. There are 1 or 2 dolls placed on the bed and the table. There are Tigger, Winnie the Pooh, and Peppa Pig. The styles are almost all from several years ago. Hie Hie was sitting in front of the table, with the tiger lying horizontally placed just enough to cover her face. He stretched out his left hand towards Hie Hie. It seemed as if he was signaling to give the thing to her. Accurately refers to baked sweet potatoes. After getting it, he quickly retracted it and held it with both hands. Peel off the burnt skin on the outside. Nibbling on it bit by bit like a hamster. It seems that he is indeed in a bad mood. Hie Hie was holding medicine and candied haws in his hands, and he felt a little awkward standing there. I simply didn't know how to say it, so I just said something to stir up trouble. Leaf, that, is it delicious? But there was still no answer. He didn't even raise his head. The only sound in the air was Tigger's occasional breathing. I guess it's because the baked sweet potatoes are still a little hot. Hie Hie couldn't help but sigh and sat on the bench next to the table. Looking up slightly, I saw an incandescent lamp hanging in the air emitting dazzling light. Make every corner of the room sparkle. Only then did he discover it. Turn out to be. There are no windows here either. Yezi, brother, actually there are a lot of things I want to say. I want to explain it to you and my parents. But about what the system said, the recognition of the world. He always felt that there were too many dangers. He was really scared. Afraid of gaining and losing. I am even more afraid of being powerless to do anything about it. But there are some things that I need to solve by myself. Some roads. I can only go alone. I used to feel like I was always drifting in an ocean of my own. But now, what I want you all to know is. He recalled the short 2 days they had spent together and always felt it was so natural. The faint smile on the corner of her mouth is like a sunflower in a field of flowers. Blooming in the wind, rain, and Sunday where you are is my home. But the embarrassing thing is that Tigger still didn't move. He couldn't help scratching the back of his neck. He stood up and prepared to leave. I just turned around and haven't taken a step yet. But it seemed like it was caught by something. He looked back and saw a hand had grabbed the corner of his clothes. Her skin was fair and delicate, and her nails were trimmed neatly and cleanly. The muscles and bones are clearly visible, and you can even see some faint light blue blood vessels. There seemed to be a red rope on his wrist. Just now, we agreed to go out and play. Does it still count? The Tigger was already in his arms. He tilted his face slightly to look at Hie. I feel inexplicably timid. There was a sparkle of water in his eyes, like the never-drying Mimir spring. Full of spirit. Endearing. Of course. Only then did Hie have the chance to show the candied haws from behind. Come close to Hie. Would you like some candied haws? Hie threw Tigger in her arms directly onto the table. He jumped up and took the candied haws from Hie. He held it high and turned around several times in excitement. I like candied haws the most. At this time, Hie took out the 2 boxes of medicine again. I looked at the production date and medication requirements again and again. Then he took out 2 capsules and tore open the tin foil covering the outer layer of the medicine. The capsules should be taken 3 times a day, 2 each time, while the topical medicine should be applied once a day to the bag. But when Hie heard this, her face was full of question marks. What medicine? What package? It took me a while to remember what happened yesterday. And now I have no idea where the math test paper has gone. The one with 59 points. Suddenly, there was a great sorrow, a feeling of despair. I can't take the medicine, and I don't know if it tastes bitter. Besides, my head doesn't hurt anymore. The issue of the test paper must also be covered up. The latter thing, well, more important. Brother's so sweet. My headache has gone away. As for these medicines, let's keep them for now. We can use them in case something happens in the future. Don't you agree? Good guy, he even said you. But Hie's expression didn't change after hearing this. He walked out on his own. Hie didn't expect this reaction. Do you believe it? But she herself hasn't been convinced by this reason. I was just about to chase over to see what Hie was doing. But before he reached the door, he came back. And in his left hand he was holding a glass of boiled water. On the right hand, holding a test paper. Only then did Hie realize that she was too naive. To be precise, there is no escape. So she simply sat back at the table. Put the candied haws in Tigger's mouth. Here you go. A gentle and peaceful smile appeared on her face. But there is no highlight in the eyes anymore. Brother. I just want to ask a question. When you said we were going out to play, the time didn't mean now, did it? Hie Hie had just put the water on the table and sat back on the stool. Then he smiled, his face full of amiability, sincerity, and kindness. Right. Perhaps, the beautiful girl's collapse only takes a moment. Hie Hie immediately stretched out her hands and legs and moved them up and down on the table. But there was no quarrel. And Hie Hie started looking at the paper. Coincidentally, he had just seen this paper again. It was pressed down well under the electric kettle in the corner of the dining table, with only a corner exposed. Hie Hie started from the first question and glanced over all of them. The result is that almost all of them have been done or seen in the original world. It seems that the general knowledge level of this world should overlap with that of the original world. To be conservative, they should be at least mostly the same. In fact, Hie Hie was somewhat relieved. Even if it was mostly the same, he was confident that he could get into any university he wanted. The reason why I submitted an application to study abroad at Castle College. In fact, it is just plan B if something that you are about to do fails. Then Hie Hie looked at where Hie Hie made mistakes. The whole paper is filled with drafts, and you can tell she actually put a lot of effort into it. Let's not talk about multiple choice questions or fill in the blank questions, let's talk about essay questions. In fact, many of the points deducted are process points or the points were calculated correctly but filled in incorrectly. Hie Hie felt sorry for her. For some questions that I don't know the answer to, the boxes are very clear. It seems that they are all skipped directly. In the upper right corner of the back paper, there seems to be a square root symbol drawn on it. Tigger? Although Hie Hie being able to recognize it is also a kind of ability. Stop. He roughly figured out the possible problems Hie Hie might have in her studies. I have to go out and play, but before that. Hie Hie said as he picked up Tigger from the table and put it on the bed. Then he spread the paper on the table. After eating and applying the medicine, do the wrong questions on the test paper again, and then you can go out and play. Such a kind and natural smile. But in Hie Hie's eyes, why does he look like a devil? Where is my brother? I wonder if it's feasible to run away under the pretext of saving my brother who disappeared in an instant. Okay. It seems that she is still very clear about the current situation. Can you feel the bag on your head? There was no. I can touch it. Well, then you can apply it yourself, but be careful not to get it all over your head. Brother, who are you looking down on? I can do this well in a matter of minutes. Maybe Hie Hie will find out only after a long time. There were 5 words neatly engraved on the wooden table that he covered with the scroll. Castle Academy. Chapter 33. On this day, Hie Hie was unable to go out and play after all. Even now, we are still struggling. But it must be said that her basic knowledge is indeed lacking. But when Hie Hie taught her and asked her questions, she studied very seriously and answered very rigorously. Well, of course, this is true or false. Not long after, Zhang Xinjian and Hie Fukao came back together. And Hie Fukao seemed to have already known about studying abroad. As soon as he got home, Hie Hie was called to his and Zhang Xinjian's bedroom. Their room is slightly bigger than the brother and sisters. Hie Hie also discovered it at this time. It turns out that none of the 3 bedrooms in this house have windows. Perhaps the only place in this home that can be illuminated by sunlight is the flower fields and vegetable fields. And the star point space that can be accommodated through the courtyard gate. After Hie Fukao went in, he started rummaging through the closet. He didn't seem to find it below, so he stood on tiptoe to look at the compartment above. It took a while to dig out a pocket from the upper layer of quilt. Then he sat on the bed and untied the bag that had been bent and folded many times. Then he took out a bundle of money from it. Probably around 20,000 to 30,000. That was all the money in the bag. He counted them, picked out 10 and handed them to Hie Hie. However, Hie Hie just stood there without moving, not even looking at the money. Just looking at Hie Fukao seriously. Dad, I don't want it. I will take care of the money issue. Who knew that Hie Fukao would just stand up and angrily slap the money into Hie Hie's hand? What do you want to solve? Your father is still here. Take this money and buy some things for your study abroad. After saying that, he sat back on the bed, paused for a moment, and took out his wallet which was a little peeling. Pull out a piece of brittle paper from its compartment. There was a look of nostalgia or even doting at the corner of his mouth. Do you remember what this is? It seems to be something very old, and perhaps related to him. Then Hie Hie is definitely unknown if it is infinite. I don't remember much. This answer suggests maybe. That is, I seem to remember a little, but not much. Although the result when it reaches other people's ears is just forget it. But there must always be some room for maneuver. Hifukeo unfolded the piece of paper, which was about the size of a palm. With the fingertips of his right hand, he gently patted the tiny pieces of paper floating on top. You were still young at that time, so it's normal that you don't remember it. As he spoke he raised his head slightly as if recalling something. I think he's about 6 years old. At that time, I had to go out to work, and you had just started primary school, and your voice was still a bit childish. Your mother was holding your hand and holding your sister, and I was about to get on the train, and you didn't say anything, but just gave this to me. As he spoke, the smile on his face grew wider. But why does the slightly curved corners of his eyes make him look so lonely? In the blink of an eye, I'm already an 18-year-old boy. We are getting old too. As he spoke, he propped himself up with his hands on his legs and stood up. This note has been in Dad's wallet for 12 years. Now, Dad returns it to you. Hie Hie took it hesitantly. The 1,000 yuan was still in his left hand. When Hifukeo walked out, he put his hand on his shoulder and patted him. His face was full of relief and prayer. Go do what you want to do, son. These words were like thunder, exploding in Hie Hie's ears. The inexplicable trembling in his heart was telling him. This didn't seem to be what he felt. It was more like it came from an old friend who had been taken away by Seraph. In a place farther than the horizon, there is a suspended island more gorgeous than the sea of flowers in Provence. He stood where the sky met. A tear slid down her cheek and fell to the ground. It just dripped onto Hie Hie's heart. Thanks. Thank you to whom? Hie Hie always felt as if he heard something. Met someone. He stands outside the unknown sky. Face full of tears, but smiling. The eyes seem to be filled with the beauty of mountains and waters, showing the charm of spirit. Is he talking? Perhaps I have seen him before? Who is he thanking and why? Why are there tears streaming down my cheeks? Slowly dripping to the ground. Make a splash. Hie Hie wiped his face quickly. It even feels a little inexplicable. The mood of youth. Maybe that's the case. Like a kite with its string cut, floating lightly. Just flew away. Hie Hie finally accepted the 1,000 yuan. Then fold the paper back along the previous fold. Place it in a small compartment of your shoulder bag. Of course he had seen the note. There is a story written on it. Very long. Storing the past and the present. And Hie Hie, perhaps only in the distant future, can he open it again. The family after dinner. Hie Hie went back to her room to study. Prepare to continue working hard on that paper. Hifukeo and Zhang Xinjian took out things that Hie Hie might need when mailing his study abroad application. The family had no experience with this. Including Hie Hie. In the past, he had no time to pay attention to these things that were too far away. We may not yet have decided what to eat in the afternoon or what to wear during the cold wave. So Hie Hie decided to put everything that might be used in it. Copy of ID card, copy of student ID card, past transcripts, HSMC Mathematical Modeling Competition Champion, Mathematical Olympiad Champion, etc. These Hie Hie basically all exist in the original world. But there is another one, the city-level Brave Act Award. This was something he had never experienced before. When I asked my parents, they still looked scared when they described the scene. 5 years ago, Typhoon Dandelion No. 0407 landed locally. The sky changed color and the earth shook. The strong wind brought with it a menacing thunderstorm. The stone bricks and wooden pillars of the ancient building made a squeaking sound when blown. It seemed like it would collapse at any moment. The fences and flowers in the city were all rolled up and flew up, smashing in all directions. For a moment, the sound of the wind was heard outside. Because the government gave advance notice. So almost everyone in the city has been hiding in their homes. The family sat together, holding hands, and praying that the divine punishment outside would go away quickly. Some people even thought that someone disrespected the mountain god, which made him furious. So the disaster happened again. But that day, Hie Hie did not hide at home. Li Ruyan said this typhoon was like a tornado. At that time, it will definitely suddenly rise from the ground and then rush into the sky. All in all, it's very cool. So, as soon as school was over, he dragged Hie Hie to a high mountain on the outskirts of the city. because that day was actually still 1 or 2 days away from the official forecast time. Hie Hie just let him do what he wanted. There was a tower on the mountain, and they stood on the top of the tower ready to witness the occurrence of a typhoon. Li Ruan even built a Nikon Ukulin A211 telescope on the top of the tower. But they ultimately underestimated the destructive power of this typhoon. They also have no idea about the process of typhoon formation. Does that show how suicidal and meaningless their actions are? No. They even saved a dozen people. Of great significance. It should even be said that I am extremely grateful for their actions. This is also what is said by those who are saved. When Hie Hie and Li Ruan discovered that something was wrong, all kinds of things were already blowing up in the sky above the city in front of them. Flower pots, windows, fences, bicycles. Even animals. The trees at the foot of the mountain also began to shake violently and irregularly. The wind direction was like a suffocating feeling of fear, coming from down the mountain. Climb up. For He and Yi, they only needed to stay on top of the tower and wait for the disaster to subside. However, Hie Hie saw a group of people on the main road on the mountainside, who were blown by the strong wind and were at a loss. The girl in the lead was squatting on a step, holding her head and crying. In her hand she held a flag that read, "Chasing Light Travel Agency." Chapter 34. Seeing this, Hie Hie turned around and ran down the tower without hesitation. Li Ruan was full of confusion and shock at his action, but when he looked in the direction of his gaze, he immediately felt that it was normal. But when he looked at the group of people, there was no hope of salvation in his eyes. But irritability. Even, angry. But he still followed Hie Hie in the end. This is nature. What happens to other people has nothing to do with him. But for Hie Hie. No, when the two ran to the main mountain path and saw the group of people. Some people could no longer stand steadily and ran around with hunched backs. Some were even crawling on the ground, holding on to the stairs with their hands and feet, moving up step by step. No one dared to look behind them. Because there is not only a strong wind behind us. There are also steps that are almost 45 degrees. Every time I turn my head to look, I inexplicably have a feeling of being upside down. It seemed as if it would fall backwards and roll down at any time. The main road of this mountain has tens of thousands of steps from the foot of the mountain to the top. From the foot of the mountain to where they were standing was the 4,951st step. The very edge of each step is engraved with the specific level of the stairs. Therefore the mountain is also called, climbing Tian Shan Mountain. From this we can see that if you fall from here, death is certain. Everyone was screaming and praying. Some people are praying to God, hoping to be saved by the son of Helen and the nymph Orzas. Some people were gazing at the mountain that housed the temple, hoping that the mountain god who had once saved this land would have mercy and appear again to quell this catastrophe. Before the fear that pierced the bones, everyone seemed to have lost the will to save themselves and the most basic ability to think. The most desperate thing at this moment is not the hurricane that is about to climb. But everyone accepts their fate. Run. At this point, on a higher level than everyone else, a young man running against the wind and light shouted at them. It's like a star rising on the edge of darkness. Before people can come to their senses, it has already arrived upon them. Is it the god they were praying for that has arrived? No. It was just a young man who came. A very beautiful boy with beautiful eyes. Quick! 3 people hold each other's clothes by the back and line up in a vertical line. But these people seemed to be stunned and did not move at all. This caused the young man, who was swaying even when standing in the wind, to roar, "Want to die?" At this moment, Li Ruan, who was standing motionless by the side, seemed to have a blood-red look in his eyes. When he looked at this group of people, he was filled with murderous intent. It seemed like they were touching a line again. Kill them. Maybe it's not the wind and the mountain. Only then did people come to their senses and quickly stood up and lined up as Hie Hie said. Men or stronger people stand in the front. The second strongest people stand at the back. The weakest people stand in the middle. Everyone seemed to have found a fulcrum at this moment, and there was light in their eyes. They all lined up as required. But in the end there was one more person. It was the girl who was squatting on the steps crying with her head in her hands. She still does. Hie Hie quickly grabbed her hand and helped her up. The girl's face was covered with tears, and her watery eyes were filled with fear and hope. And when I saw Hie Hie, it seemed like there was something more. What, Senior Yi? Although Hie Hie was puzzled as to why this person knew him, this was obviously not the time to seek answers. Li Ruan. You stand at the front. In fact, Li Ruan was already standing at the front when his name was called. He was impatient, but not for himself. His face looked a little gloomy and nervous. I couldn't help but glance at Hie Hie. Although it was only a momentary expression, he clearly saw the slight frown on Hie Hie's brows. This is endurance. You grab his clothes. I'll push you from behind. This was said to the girl. At this time, Hie Hie couldn't help but lower his head slightly, and cold sweat had already seeped out of his forehead. The girl seemed to come back to her senses, and there was an inexplicable trust in her eyes. Hurry up and stand as Hie Hie said. Follow this formation and walk up the mountainside. At the end of the path on the far left of the mountainside there is an unfinished house. We should be able to avoid the typhoon there. In fact, this is just Hie Hie's guess. Because this was only his second time to come to this mountain, and this time he took the cable car up. He had only seen the house from the cable car, and the exterior had not yet been plastered. But this is the only way. In this situation, running to the tower on the top of the mountain is impossible. Fortunately, in the end, he guessed right. Although the door was closed, there was a window that could be pushed open. Everyone helped each other and entered the house. In the end, all of you stayed in that house for a day and a night. When the weather got better, government personnel went up the mountain to search and rescue and found you. Many of those people were from other places and came with tour groups. Many of them knelt down to thank you. That's why you and that brat Li Ruan both received the city's bravery award. Speaking of that day, if I hadn't told you to always carry medicine with you, you would. As she was talking, Zhang Xinjian couldn't continue. As if it would come true once I said it. At this time, Hie Hie, who had been listening without speaking, took over the conversation. A face full of gossip. By the way, among the group of people you rescued, there was a little girl who seemed to be from your school, a year younger than you, eh? Her name was Li. Li, what's that? As he said this, he nudged Zhang Xinjian with his shoulder, meaning to ask for the answer to this question. However, Zhang Xinjian had an expression of helplessness and unbearableness on her face. Li Shutong. Hie Hie slapped his head, as if an idea had suddenly occurred to him. Yes, that's the name. As he spoke, he patted Hie Hie's shoulder with his right hand, with an expression of a bystander on his face. Based on your father's experience in the love field, that girl must like you. You were too young at the time so your dad didn't tell you, but now you're about to take the college entrance exam, so it's time for you to find a girl to date. Dad, let me tell you, girls are thin-skinned, but men need to be thicker-skinned. As long as my son. Before he could finish his words, a wind-filling palm hit him in the face from the right. Zhang Xinjian raised her right hand high, with an expression that showed that she had been enduring for a long time. You spread this kind of thinking to your son every day, and you are also a master in the love field. In the beginning, only I was interested in you and let you trick me into giving you that paper ring. Year hasn't even taken the college entrance exam yet, what are you saying as a father? Hie Hie watched them fighting and dodging from the side, with an awkward smile on his face throughout. Li Shutong? It seems that I have heard this name on the plane to Tokyo. But the rest is blank. At this time, Zhang Xinjian seemed to suddenly think of something while playing. Then he looked at Hie Hie who was sitting beside him. The same smile that Zhang Fukeo had just shown appeared on his face. There is affirmation in gossip, and there is relief in affirmation. But let me be honest, Year, that girl was indeed interested in you. Her expression and eyes at that time. Before Zhang Xinjian could finish her words, Hie Hie grabbed something on the table that he might need and escaped outside. Mom and Dad, I'm going to send in my application. Otherwise, I'm afraid the store will be closed. As for why you want to escape? I can't explain it clearly, I just feel like I'm the center of a bagua formation, being watched by that kind of eyes the whole time. I feel quite embarrassed. Hie Hie planned to buy a detailed map of the city first, after all, it would be needed soon. After sending the application, maybe I should go to that school. There are many stories in it, and the exciting parts are about to be staged. And as the inevitable scene stealer on stage, how could I not be the first to arrive at the opening ceremony? Chapter 35. Hie Hie was already standing at the gate of Shilan Middle School. Everything about this school seems to be no different. The sounds of reading, laughter, and the innocent smiles of boys and girls in the pavilion. For them, the power of youth is irrepressible. Even hell can become heaven. Maybe this is what a campus should be like. Then why have I never felt such an atmosphere before? Have no idea. It doesn't matter anymore. It seemed to be still class time. When entering the school gate, the security guard did not stop Hie Hie. He also greeted him warmly and asked about his trip to Tokyo. Finally, he asked the reason for entering and opened the horizontal sliding shutter door. I opened it while asking. As for Hie Hie's answer, it was just that he was going to get a book or something. After a tour around the school, I got a general understanding of the basic location and structure of the school's important facilities. When I passed by an open cinema, I saw several kittens of different colors playing around at the door. What Hie Hie didn't know was that there was a night when the poor boy made a sad confession. It represents the farewell ceremony to this city. The red-haired witch eventually took his hand and led him to a world far away from this place. Finally, on the way back, we passed by the entrance of a hotel. 2133, April 26, 2009 Regency Hotel. Tall and magnificent, especially at this moment, the whole building was shining with golden light. Therefore, it is more conspicuous in this city. This place can even be called the turning point of Liu Mingfei's fate. Guderian, or rather the Castle Academy. It was here that I met Liu Mingfei for the first time. And for Hie Hie, this will also be the hammer he uses to knock on the door of Castle College. But it's not time yet. It was already 22:30 when Hie Hie returned home. Hie Hie came to open the door. He Fukao and Zhang Xinjian seemed to have fallen asleep. It seems that the situation yesterday was also a coincidence. As soon as he entered the door, Hie Hie looked at him with a wronged and angry look. At first Hie Hie didn't react. But after seeing the test paper in her hand, he suddenly came to his senses. Completion. I said before that I would go and explain to her the questions that I really don't understand. But he had escaped when he was attacked by men and women and gossiped about it. Totally forgot about this. So, what is it, Leaf? Hie Hie quickly prepared to make up for the loss. Unexpectedly, Hie Hie ignored her and just shook her head slightly and turned away. His tone was filled with disappointment and sarcasm. Ah, some people really forget their own sisters when they have junior sisters. It's better to be busy, it's better to be busy. As he said this, he put his hands behind his back, looking like an empty nest old man. Hie Hie lived in Bungbu, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What kind of schoolgirl is this? I really went out to do some serious work. It's just that the distance between each destination is a bit far, so most of the time is spent on the road. I just mailed in my application and wandered around the school. Hie Hie turned her head slightly and gave a tactical fake smile. Haha, I see. It seems that he doesn't believe it at all. There is no other choice but to use the ultimate move. When I went out just now, I found out that there's a movie coming out, 17 again. Hie Hie said this while observing Hie Hie's reaction. It was obvious that she paused just now. There's hope. It looks like it will be next Saturday. I wonder if anyone wants to go and take a look that afternoon. Sure enough, she turned around immediately. He put the paper in his hand against Hie Hie's chest and ran back to the room. There was another loud voice before closing the door, I want to go. Hie Hie looked at the door that had just closed, the light pink flower knot tassel on the door handle was still shaking. He really didn't know what to do when facing such a little girl. He took the paper and read all 4 sides carefully. It was a bit of a surprise. All corrected. But when I inadvertently looked at a certain place on it, I actually shook my head slightly. But a smile had already crept up to his brows without him noticing. On the test paper, the tiger drawn using the square root of arithmetic has been redrawn in detail. His right hand was still pointing at Hie Hie, who was now looking at him. There are 4 words written on each of the 4 corners. Put together, I forgive you. Hie Hie gently closed it and held it in his right hand. Open the door and pull the switch next to it. The slightly dim light came on. He didn't do anything else. He just put the paper away and then lay down on the bed, staring blankly at the flickering light in the middle of the room. It's not dazzling at all. You can even see the wick inside. Hie Hie suddenly remembered a sentence he had read in a book, even if you live in the gutter, you still have the right to look up at the stars. This sentence doesn't seem to fit him now. But compared to the future he is about to face, perhaps that is exactly the case. Shattered regrets, shattered regrets. Isn't it the endless journey from the abyss of darkness to the realm of the starry sky? Hie Hie always felt that his heart was getting restless again. My vision became blurry. The scattered lights were running around and crowded together. It seems to be about to form a picture. But before he could see clearly, he was swallowed up by the darkness. It's about to begin. These last words, which sounded like a dream, were also integrated into it. Missing trace. The next day, when I opened my eyes, I still saw the same light. I probably forgot to turn it off last night. I opened my Nokia and saw the time, 6:31. This is also the time when he usually wakes up. I didn't dream about the golden dragon eyes in the deep darkness last night. This made him feel much better for some reason. I opened the door and walked out. The sky was still a little chaotic. But for high school students, this time to get up is neither early nor late. He went to wash his face and brush his teeth. But I found that he hadn't gotten up yet. So he knocked on her door. A lazy response came from inside. He then remembered that he hadn't even taken the book yet. Then he went to the table and took some main subject books and put them in his shoulder bag. In fact, for Hie, there is no difference between taking it or not. After all, he had already passed the college entrance examination in his original world. After taking it, he sat on the stool next to the dining table and waited for Hie. Just sitting there is a bit boring. So he took out another Hyuxia textbook. Just turned to the first page. In addition to Hie's name and class, there is a row of small words in the upper right corner: Dad, September 7th Mom, July 4th Leaves, November 15th Li Ruin, April 4th, and there is a red dot under the first number before each month. Hie naturally didn't know what this meant. But since it's all about time, it should be within the birthday. As for the reason for marking the red dot, there is no way to guess. At this time, Hie's door finally opened. Stretching and yawning. But the school uniform is already on. Both the shirt and pants are a two-tone design of blue and white. Like the sky at noon in midsummer. The clouds and the sky are together. The singing of orioles and the chirping of cicadas echo together. Hie then noticed that he was still wearing the pure white t-shirt. Before he could get up to change. Hie has found the first funny point of the day. Ha ha ha, brother, are you still asleep? You're not even wearing your school uniform. He rubbed his eyes as he spoke. But that didn't seem to stop her from smiling at all. Hie scratched the back of his head, stood up and prepared to change into his school uniform. Take a shower, by the way. It seems that I have never had any time for myself these days, indeed. It has a bit of taste. But I just walked into the bedroom to look for my school uniform. Hie came over again, holding the toothbrush cup in one hand and brushing her teeth with the other. Half of the body was exposed next to the door frame. Oh, sorry brother, I forgot. It seems that you don't have to wear school uniforms during your senior year, right? Hie's hand, which had just grabbed the school uniform, was stunned in an instant. Yeah, right. Are you going to change the school uniform? After thinking about it, maybe it's not a good idea to just go like this. So he took it and went to take a shower. Chapter 36. When the brother and sister arrived at school, there were still very few people around. It's still a bit grey everywhere. The sky in late spring is like this, always as if covered by a veil. But now there is a problem. The class can find the answers on the front page of the book. How do I find a seat? Hie stood at the school gate and felt really troubled by this problem. But I couldn't find a solution for the time being. I could only walk towards the main teaching building while thinking urgently. Because I had already entered the school to observe before. The senior year floor is on the top floor. There is also a layer of teachers' offices in the middle. So Hie knew that Hie was going to separate from him on the first floor. If not asking now, when? Yes, let me test you. Do you know where my seat is? He also pretended that he had a sudden impulse. Hie was just about to walk towards her class when she suddenly heard Hie's inexplicable question. Suddenly, an expression of understanding appeared on his face. Oh brother, you are not. As he spoke, that smile that seemed to see through everything grew wider. This made Hie feel inexplicably guilty. No way, it's obvious that you don't know where to sit. You don't want to skip school. After hearing this answer, Hie felt a little contemptuous of himself for being so nervous just now. Look at the girl in front of you who is still seeing through everything. He put two fingers of his right hand together and stretched them out, then pressed them against Hie's forehead. He pushed her back several steps. A face full of helplessness and a faint smile. Go back to class. Hie Hie covered her forehead with her hands, said oh, and turned to walk towards the row of first-year students. He kept mumbling something. Brother seems to be stronger. No, am I getting weaker? Damn it, I have to eat more when I get home today. The more I eat, the stronger I will be. Hie Hie stood there and watched the girl slowly return to the classroom. As soon as he entered, he suddenly took the bucket from a girl. Then he ran to get some water. This wave of operations left him stunned. Is it her turn today? The reality is, carrying a bucket of water is the most challenging part of your strength. Oh, and balance. Hie Hie walked slowly up the stairs. There's no need to be fast. Or rather, I dare not go too fast. Wouldn't it be the end of me standing in class at a loss as to what to do? But this is not actually the most difficult part. The most difficult thing is, those classmates only know about their own fake death? Or did you know it together with amnesia? Or maybe you don't know either. Now analyzing it, the former possibility is actually relatively lower. Because if all the students in a class already know about it, that's impossible since my parents and sister don't know about it yet. But this is just relatively low. He really hopes it is the last possibility. Because of this, the only one who has a hard time is myself. Isn't that good? At least you won't make anyone else feel sad for you. As I was thinking, I had already reached the highest floor where the senior year was. Compared to other floors, there are obviously a lot more people here. The sound of reading aloud can be heard at every corner and staircase. Some people hold books and read as they walk. Some people simply squatted against the wall and wrote the questions step by step with a pen. Everyone is very busy and wishes they could split 1 minute into 2 minutes. Hie Hie is already very used to such scenes. I took out my Hyuxia textbook and confirmed the class again. Senior 3, 5, class. It is the class at the innermost row on the right after going upstairs. This is also where Hie Hie is about to go. But the strange thing is, compared with other classes, there was no one at the door of this classroom coming out for morning reading. The lights weren't even on. At this time when it was almost dawn, the classroom seemed much darker than at night. Have they not come back yet? Hie Hie couldn't help but have this question in his mind. That would be great if it were true. Then you can have time to check where you are sitting. You can also start the experiment in advance. About the power of supernuclear replication of the word spirit and the king's power in his body. Hie Hie walked under the class sign and still didn't hear any sound. Just when I felt relieved and was about to go in and look for clues, suddenly, all the lights in the classroom turned on. It was so bright that my eyes felt slightly swollen. Bang, bang, bang. Hie Hie only saw and heard a few gunshots. When I opened my eyes, all I saw were flying ribbons and sparkling sequins. Surprise! Congratulations to Xiao Ai for escaping death. What followed was another round of loud and orderly cheers. Congratulations! When Hie Hie looked down at the lecture hall again, he was surprised. There were about 40 seats in the class, all of which were filled with people. Everyone looked at him with blessings and joy. It's even a feeling of regaining what was lost. Several girls had tears in their eyes. It seemed like it would flow down the corners of his eyes at any time. Hie Hie just froze in place. What is going on? Who could have guessed this situation before coming up? Just laugh, and everything will be fine. So Hie Hie scratched his hair and smiled foolishly. But his smile was a little stiff. But this does not stop him from starting to think now. Escape from death. In other words, they didn't die. Could it be that they only knew that they were ill but didn't know that they had died? Instead, it directly skipped the intermediate process and omitted the final result, becoming. The disease relapsed, but the patient did not die. The patient survived and is back to normal? Hie Hie couldn't help but glance at everyone quickly. As expected, Li Ruyan was not there. But there was someone there. Zhang Yan. This was something Hie Hie had not expected. According to what we knew before, Zhang Yan was Li Ruyan's personal bodyguard. And it's a latent one. Now that it appears here, it seems that the previous speculation can be confirmed. He was sent by Li Ruyan to protect him. Hie Hie finally breathed a sigh of relief. At least I won't have to face these classmates alone. After all, Zhang Yan also knows about his amnesia. Since all clues tend towards this possibility, then the time for performance has come. Hie Hie bowed slightly to the students attending the lecture. Then put on a smile that you think is brilliant. He was recalling his smile. Want to imitate. But I always feel that I seem to have a lot less and a lot more than him. Therefore, it seems that I will never be like him. It's not him even though they look exactly the same. But some things just can't be fooled. For example, eyes. Thank you for your concern, I am much better now. I can't say more, the tolerance rate of these two sentences is already quite high. After saying this, almost all the students in the class rushed towards Hie Hie. Some people touched his hands and feet, claiming to check whether all the parts of his body are complete. Some people had wet faces and covered their mouths with their hands, trying not to cry out loud. In front of Hie Hie, she told him about their panic and fear on the ferry that day. Others just stood quietly beside Hie Hie. The smile on his face was simple and sincere. He crossed his fingers and held his hands tightly against his chest, his brows slightly relaxed. It seemed as if he was thanking God for hearing his prayers. This seems to be what student life is like. Just like the citrus trees in summer, with green-skinned fruits hanging on them, they are definitely bitter, but also sweet. The sudden feeling of being touched may be like the weather in March or April. You never know when clear skies will arrive. But Hie Hie has felt it now. This warm sunny day. With astringent sweetness. Chapter 37. Okay, everyone clean up the classroom and get ready for morning reading. Zhang Yan walked out from the group of students, still looking sleepy. When everyone heard this, they responded reluctantly. At this time, a young man with a wolf tail invited Hie Hie and took him to the second-to-last window seat in the first row. Hie Hie, even though we're old classmates, I definitely won't take you out to play anymore. That's too scary. It ruined our trip to Tokyo, but... At this point, the young man's inviting hand seemed to gain a little more strength. He grinned, revealing 2 rows of white teeth, and had a bright smile. I'm glad you're okay. Is this what it means when a car reaches a mountain, there will always be a way? The seating problem that had been puzzling Hie Hie was suddenly solved. But before he could feel happy as soon as he sat down, Zhang Yan came over. Hie Hie, come out with the teacher. At this time? Here? But Hie Hie still followed him out. Walk all the way to the balcony at the innermost water collection area. Standing inside the glass fence, you can even look out and see your home. Hie Hie, it seems we still have some issues to discuss at the teacher's house. Zhang Yan lit a cigarette. The bang-bang sound made by the DuPont lighter when the flip cover was opened seemed even louder after these words. Hie Hie couldn't help but become nervous again. My previous guess should be correct. He must have been sent by Li Ruan. But the problem? Could it be that? Teacher Zhang, regarding this question, I think if I have something to do, there is no need for me to report it to you, right? Now that I have confirmed that he is safe with me, it is better to be clear about my attitude directly instead of saying something suggestive to him. Zhang Yanggong took a puff of cigarette and slowly exhaled it from his mouth. It was as if the dim sky was shrouding the man's face. From Hie Hie's perspective, he clearly saw a hint of red flashing inexplicably in this person's pupils. Hie Hie, have you ever read a book called The Queen of the Broken Head? At this juncture, Zhang Yan seemed to suddenly skip Hie Hie's answer and instead asked another question. All the gifts of fate have already been secretly marked with a price. This sentence is the core point that this book wants to explain. I have read it before. Indeed, he had read it. It was a famous book that he had read in the library of the original world. It tells the story of a French queen who was sent to the guillotine because of her addiction to pleasure. But this obviously seems to have nothing to do with what they are talking about now. Zhang Yan flicked the cigarette on the fence, and a few wisps of ashes fell down along the glass. Then he looked at the golden red just appearing on the distant hilltops. That's quite true. Then do you think that if Queen Antoinette had repented earlier, would things have been much better? Hie Hie seemed to realize what he wanted to make her understand, just give up what you are about to do. Unfortunately, some things should be given up halfway through. And some things happen even when you encounter despair. It is like standing on the brink of death, mocking the god of death's incompetence. Given the character of the protagonist, even if she is given another chance to start over, it's just a repeat of the past. The last wisp of tobacco slipped out of his mouth. Zhang Yan finally took his last puff. The cigarette is already at the bottom, but it still flickers. Yet, he simply put out the cigarette butt with 2 fingers of his right hand. Snow-white ash leaked from the fingertips. Then he took the cigarette butt in his hand and put it in his pocket. He turned around and walked away. At this time, the sun on the hill over there was finally about to come out completely. But it doesn't seem glaring at all. At this time, Zhang Yan stopped. Hie Hie, are you and Li Ruyan still friends? The sunlight that filtered through the edge of the roof only reached his feet. It seemed that the place where he was standing seemed to become even darker. Yes. A strange question. A positive and direct answer. Oh, that's good. Let's go back and read in the morning. If you have any questions, you can look through your diary more. At this time, Hie Hie finally couldn't help it, took 2 steps forward and asked, Excuse me, Mr. Zhang, why didn't Li Ruyan and you tell my parents and classmates about my amnesia? When Zhang Yan heard this question, he couldn't help scratching his head, seeming to be very troubled. Li Ruyan, he was called back home because of something. I didn't even have time to talk about your amnesia. Perhaps after he finishes that, he will come back and explain all this. Something? Too late? Maybe? This answer is too ambiguous. But I don't remember anything, how can? Before Hie Hie finished speaking, Zhang Yan made a signature Pepsi gesture to him, put your hands together with your thumbs bent sideways. You are the next Zhang Hanyu. Best Actor at the 45th Golden Horse Awards in 2008, after saying that, he turned around and walked away quickly. He said something as he walked. Oh, you lost your memory and don't seem to know who Zhang Hanyu is. Hie Hie was so shocked by this move that he stood there in a daze. What is this? It means you have to do it yourself. But has this been completely passed by him? After all, if he wanted to get rid of me, it might only take a pull and a push. This is the 4th floor after all. Hie Hie quickly returned to the classroom. Then he took out the diary that Zhang Yan mentioned just now. This is the book that Hie Hie previously thought was the Edict of Sin from his middle school years. This is obviously a hint. But it seems to be of no use. There are 10,000 possible 4-digit passwords. Do I try them one by one? At this moment, Hie Hie suddenly remembered the date he saw in the Hyuxia textbook this morning. 4 people's birthday. There is a red dot under the first digit of each date, which is exactly 4 digits. Is there really such a coincidence in the world? Or is there really anyone who would set a password like this? The answer is have. After entering the information in order, the diary immediately floated up a little. The lock opened. Hie Hie couldn't help but be overjoyed. He immediately started to look through his diary. From the first page to the last page. It's not the end yet, there's still about 1/3 of the paper that hasn't been written on. I started writing this diary in junior high school. Not every day is recorded. But every time I make a friend or encounter an interesting thing, I will write it down. For example, how embarrassed Li Ruyan was when he played with a dog on his way home and then was chased by the dog. Yezi I went home for the holiday. On the way, she was smiling happily with a lollipop in her left hand and a roasted ham in her right hand. Mom made some dough balls and Dad and my sister were very happy eating them. Dad has a temporary shift today and won't be back until 3 or 4 in the morning. A lot has happened in the past 5 or 6 years. There are both good and bad ones. But as Hie Hie watched, he inexplicably felt a tightness in his chest. Because he searched the diary over and over again, and it seemed that there was one person missing. He himself. A person's diary is filled with other people's stories. Family, friends, the puppy I met on the roadside, the little flower I almost stepped on. All with joyful colors. Even if it is something worth being sad about, there is still optimism between the lines. Hie Hie's flipping hand stopped at the last entry in the diary. It says that Li Ruyan is very happy and his classmates are all very happy. Because they were about to board the plane to Japan. My parents and sister are a little worried about me. But this time, he also wanted to go and see, what does the cherry blossoms in Chidoragafuka look like? Are the streets of Akihabara filled with colorful people? Does the world's busiest intersection really have 3,000 people passing through it every minute? At the end of the diary, a new line begins. The boy's anticipation and joy can be seen in every word. After I go back, I can tell them. Chapter 38. He did not return as expected, and this is the meaning of parting. Even in everyone's heart, Hie Hie may always be there. But at least Hie Hie himself will be remembered forever. A young man became him. And he will become that young man. Hie Hie used one morning reading time to memorize the details of the entire diary. There is even a structural diagram of the names of all the students in the class, with their names written according to their seats. For example, the wolf-tailed boy who was dozing off next to him. His name is Zhang Xiaodong. It seems that he is the person who claimed on the plane that he had just fallen asleep after a day and a night. So Hie Hie looked around the classroom, trying to match names with people. But when I looked out the window into the corridor, I happened to meet another person's gaze. It seemed to be a girl, with only a pair of clear and moving eyes showing on the windowsill. It seems to be hazy, as if it were rendered with fog. She seemed to be aware of Hie Hie's gaze as well. The pupil shrank and then slightly contracted. When I lowered my head, it seemed that I hit the bricks of the window. This made Hie Hie stand up slightly. It even scared Zhang Xiaodong awake. When I woke up, I saw Hie Hie suddenly standing up. Following his gaze, I saw a figure running away with his hands covering his forehead. The long hair draped over her shoulders fluttered as she ran like waves on a beach in midsummer. Zhang Xiaodong then revealed a gossipy and frivolous smile. Hey, you just came back and a junior sister came to see you. Could it be our junior sister Li, Hie? As he spoke, he nudged Hie Hie with his shoulder. It would be a lie to say I'm not envious, and it's also true that I'm sarcastic about it. Hie Hie sat down slowly, feeling a little headache. Is it true? I have never been liked by anyone, it seems. How to deal with this situation, where to learn, waiting online, very urgent. He planned to wait and see what happened. After reading the diary, I have a pretty good understanding of the basic people and things that need attention. There should be no problem using it to pass the time before the college entrance examination. In the sky, the sun has become scorching and dazzling. When the light hit the table, it was still a little hot. Maybe this is a sign of summer. It foreshadows the bright future of the young boys and girls here. Time on campus always seems to pass so quickly. The teacher lectured tirelessly on the stage. Some people stared at the sunset outside the window in a daze, and looked at him from time to time. Taking a nap in class. A week has passed in the blink of an eye. I just got out of school today and I have a weekend off tomorrow. Before Hie Hie reached the door, he saw Hie Hie leaning on the windowsill with both hands and looking at him. She smiled brightly, her eyes full of anticipation. It seems that she won't be willing to go home unless she has a good time today. Sure enough, as soon as I reached the door, I was pushed forward by her. Brother, you promised to take me out to play today. Why does it sound a bit like calling pigeons? Hie Hie had no choice but to let her push him forward. After all, I promised myself, there's nothing I can do. Wait, Yezi, tell me where you want to go first. I was being pushed in front of him and didn't know where to go. Looking at the map. There are several amusement parks in this city, and they don't seem to be far away. But she is a 15 or 16-year-old girl after all, she probably wouldn't want to play those games, right? To the amusement park, of course. I want to play on the pirate ship, the windmill, and the carousel. Well, Hie admitted that he was too naive. Who can resist a colorful amusement park? Although he couldn't understand. Did you only go there to play once when you were very young? He only vaguely remembered that he was spinning and shaking up and down. Having a great time laughing. Outside a circular fence, a man and a woman were holding hands and calling his name affectionately. The entire memory was filled with the hazy golden light all around. As soon as Hie reached the second floor, someone called him. Senior Hie. There was a slight tremor in his voice, and his tone suddenly became higher as he spoke. Looking in the direction of the voice, I saw a girl being pushed forward by several people with sincere and encouraging smiles behind her. His brows were lowered, but his eyes were still filled with mist. Long wavy hair falls on shoulders. His hands were fiddling with each other in a disorderly manner. What's the matter? Hie recognized her. This should be the Li Shutong he had heard of for a long time. I passed by outside his class many times this week. As soon as their eyes met, he ran away immediately. The students in the class seemed to be used to it, but there was still a hint of envy in their words. Of course, this is almost always the case with boys. Then there was a long silence. Even many people around who were about to go downstairs stopped and looked at the two people standing in the middle. 3 people to be exact. Hie had put down her hands and was leaning on her back. Standing quietly beside Hie and watching this scene. The smile from before gradually faded and disappeared without a trace. More and more people gathered around, and many even started to make noise and whistle. Li Shutong's face was so red that it looked like steam was coming out of it. If this continues, it might not be good. Junior, if you really have something to say, why don't we talk while we walk? It's better for us to leave here first, so as not to attract the attention of the crowd. When Li Shatong heard this, her face turned even redder. But he still came over and left with Hie Hie and his sister. The three of them walked slowly on the street. The atmosphere was somewhat awkward and silent. Even Hie Hie, who usually talks the most, remained silent. Are you feeling better now? Hie Hie spoke first, breaking the eerie silence. Then Li Shatong nodded slightly. But still no words. All you could see was that his ears were all red from the smoke. So what do you want from me? Hie Hie wanted to resolve the matter as soon as possible. Because he could feel that Hie Hie next to him was emitting resentment. And some things should be said earlier. I want to invite Senior to my birthday party on Sunday. She seemed to have used up a lot of courage when she said this. Hie Hie was a little hesitant. If it's just an invitation to a birthday party, it's normal for ordinary friends to do that. But based on his observations over the past few days, this does not seem to be the case. Would ordinary friends not even dare to look at each other? He looked at the shy girl next to him and couldn't help but sigh. He didn't understand, but if it was really as his parents said. If she really likes me, then I can't give her any results. Not to mention, the Hie Hie she loved is no longer there. The person standing in front of her now is no longer the young man who saved her. So, it's time to make a decision. Since I can't make the choice for him, I can only choose for myself. Should be rejected. He will leave this city soon, and all he has to accomplish is all are far away. I'm sorry. Can I go? He was interrupted before he could even utter a word. It was Hie Hie who had been silent just now. At this time, she had already moved close to Li Shatong, holding her arms with both hands. My eyes seem to be filled with stars, twinkling continuously. This shows her expectations and yearning. Li Shatong couldn't help but laugh as she looked at the cheerful and lovely girl next to her. Of course, there will be a lot of delicious food and fun things that day, you will definitely like it. Hie Hie suddenly wanted to turn around in a circle. Then he remembered something and asked again, okay, where is the birthday party? Her grasping hands couldn't help shaking up and down, as if she couldn't wait any longer. I don't know if it's for food, fun, or just because I think the party will be fun. Li Shatong couldn't help but raise her head as she spoke. There is a beautiful smile on his face. The one right in the center of town. The Regent Hotel. Chapter 39. Hie Hie, who seemed to have been ignored from the beginning, finally spoke. Thank you for your invitation. I will go. Li Shatong heard the answer she wanted most. When I looked up, I happened to see Hie Hie smiling. Suddenly I felt like smoke was coming out of my head. As the body retreats, it escapes. 6 p.m. on weekends, Regent Hotel, don't forget it, Senior. It seems that turning her back to Hie Hie can make her more courageous. He said it again a little louder before leaving. After running a few steps, several girls came out from nowhere and surrounded him. They were discussing something with great enthusiasm. As he spoke, he occasionally turned back to glance at Hie Hie. There was gossip and curiosity in his eyes. Still looking. You forgot your real sister because you have a junior sister. Hie Hie stepped on Hie Hie's foot and said in a strange tone. Hie Hie came back to his senses at this time and patted his shoes. Fortunately, the dark green liberation shoes are not easily stained by dust, so just dust them off lightly. In fact, it didn't hurt at all, and my instep wasn't stepped on at all. Of course, it wasn't a person who made him suddenly change his mind. It's the location. Regency Hotel, isn't this the place where he is about to accomplish what he is about to do? It's just right. I can take advantage of this opportunity so that I don't have to be sneaky anymore. I don't care, you have to take me there when the time comes. The girl turned her head away after she finished speaking, and when she saw that Hie Hie didn't say anything, she became even more furious. You can't go without me, Hie, that Senior has already promised me. As he spoke, he walked forward without paying any attention to him. At worst, I can go by myself. Humph, you stinky guy, I just want to go out and play by myself, to pick up girls. Then came her classic mumbling. Hie Hie stood there, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Seeing that she had walked 5 or 6 steps without stopping, he immediately showed his ultimate move. Are you still going to the amusement park? This time, Hie Hie seemed to be tough. After hearing these words, she continued to walk forward without any intention of stopping. It seems that she really has to go there on the weekend. But Hie Hie also had his concerns, because the purpose of his going there was not what the girl imagined. There may be certain risks. But if I don't agree to her, she will really disappear. Hie Hie couldn't help but hold his forehead. He really had no way to deal with this sister. Okay, I'll take you there this weekend. It wasn't very loud, but Hie Hie, who was already 10 meters away, jumped up immediately. Then ran back to Hie Hie. Let's go, brother, let's go to the amusement park. Well, it seems that the leaf is still the same leaf. After walking for about 10 minutes, you can see a towering turntable standing in the building at the door. It was full of people, and the screams during the spinning and flying echoed throughout the sky, and still sounded very loud when it reached Hie Hie's ears. When I walked in, I found that this was actually inside a residential area. But fortunately, the security guards don't seem to stop people from going to the amusement park. Hie Hie ran alone in front, while Hie Hie followed at a certain distance. Walk along a straight road and then turn a corner to reach the entrance of the amusement park. But you have to buy a ticket at the ticket office before you can enter. There seems to be a promotion today, and each person can enjoy all the facilities inside for only 50 yuan. So Hie Hie simply bought 2 all-inclusive tickets so that she could have fun to her heart's content. 100 yuan, very expensive. Hie Hie took one and went straight to the big turntable in the middle. The goal is clear. But Hie Hie was suddenly stunned when he looked at the ticket in his hand. He said he seemed to have a heart disease. So which of these projects can you take part in? Carousel? I am an 18-year-old boy. You can't do that. I don't know if this ticket can be refunded. Hie Hie was already shouting over there. Hie Hie had no choice but to put this idea aside and walk towards her. Brother, will you sit next to me later? You will be less scared with me around, Hie Hie, and then? That's all. As Hie Hie was talking, she stopped talking. As if he had thought of something, the inexplicable moisture in his eyes had already moistened the area around his eye sockets. Then he raised his head slightly and placed his right hand on the back of his head. The smile was somewhat dry. I'm sorry, brother, I just... As he spoke, his eyes became redder. Seeing this, Hie Hie touched Hie Hie's head. Little girls are sometimes quite sensitive about these things. It's okay. I'll just watch you play from below. I don't really like playing these either. But Hie Hie still didn't move, and her eyes looked a little depressed. Then I will. When she looked at Hie Hie, he was already looking up at the people screaming and shouting. A long time. It looks really fun. It would be nice if someone could tell me what they thought after playing it. As he spoke, he tactically glanced at Hie Hie out of the corner of his eye. Sure enough, as soon as she finished speaking, she immediately volunteered, My. Your cutest sister. I'll tell you about this experience in 360 degrees later. There's also the pirate ship, the pendulum. As he spoke, his face was filled with a natural and joyful smile again. Then he looked up expectantly. Hie Hie, this isn't just to let Hie Hie play with peace of mind. In fact, it is also his true thought. Laugh freely and shout loudly on it. What an exciting thing this is. Unconsciously, his attention was completely attracted. Ah! At this moment, a shout came from somewhere and suddenly rushed towards Hie Hie. Completely different from the surprise and pleasure on the big turntable. It was a sound of fear and trembling. Hie Hie came back to his senses at this time. He noticed that the pirate ship just to the right of where he was standing suddenly began to swing extremely rapidly. Even blue electric light was appearing at the connection points of the machinery. The controller next to it had already started to emit black smoke. The hissing sounds made by the two sounded like the whispers of death. Filled with fear, Hie Hie's first reaction was to take Hie Hie and escape. No matter what disaster it is. No one can harm his family in the slightest. But just as he grabbed Hie Hie's wrist and was about to run, the pirate ship on the right suddenly made a bang and flew up directly, dragging the connection point. And the landing point is where the brother and sister are standing. Hie Hie looked at the pirate ship flying in the sky and couldn't help but think of the ark built by Decalion and Pyrrha. In this way they escaped the punishment of Zeus. And now, what this ship is going to carry are the dead souls. The people around were fleeing in panic. But Hie Hie understood that with the speed of this ship, people where it landed would have nowhere to escape. And if the answer that he quickly came to in his mind was correct, then the object that was hit would definitely be within a radius of 20 meters from where he was standing. That is to say, including the big turntable full of people on the side. Didn't I wonder before when I could test the power of the word spirit? The opportunity has come. Hie Hie quickly embraced Hie Hie in his left hand, and opened his right palm towards the pirate ship that was flying towards them. Supernuclear word spirit, the power of the true king. When the words came out, the whole place was shaken. Kingship is coming. A larger hand seemed to appear above the pirate ship that was flying to its highest point. Grab it and make it into a fist in an instant. Then with a loud bang, it crashed straight into the empty area below. Boom! It seemed like just a moment, and the pirate ship crashed to the ground. Countless clouds of smoke and dust were splashed up. It was like a huge bomb exploding, shaking everyone's cochlea. When the smoke and dust cleared, the so-called pirate ship had turned into a pile of sawdust. To be precise, it's a layer of sawdust. There is also some steel mixed in it. At this time, on the tallest TV tower in the city, hundreds of meters away, a child with a lollipop in his mouth curled his lips in disdain. The lollipop broke with a crack. As the hollow stick slid down the glass of the TV tower, the spire has disappeared. Only one sentence remained in the sound of the wind. It's getting interesting. Chapter 40. Regent Hotel ripples suddenly appeared on the surface of the tangerine tea in the hands of a burly old man with grey hair. He suddenly turned around and looked towards the large floor-to-ceiling window of the presidential suite. Then he quickly stood up and looked towards some place in the distance where the dust was still flying. In the most prosperous Lianhua supermarket in the city center, a girl with long dark red hair and a pair of silver four-leaf clover earrings stood in front of a pink hairpin. His eyes sparkled with love. Just as she was about to reach out to take it, her head suddenly trembled. Then, he was also attracted by the astonishing power in a certain direction. The light in his eyes began to change, as if he was thinking and reasoning about something in an instant. At that moment, everything fell into silence. Everyone looked at the place where the pirate ship crashed, and they were unable to recover for a long time. Some people were so frightened that their legs began to tremble and they fell to their knees. Naturally, they could not see the giant hand reaching out from the clouds. But such a large ship suddenly lost power while crashing in the air, and then crashed vertically to the ground with a force that was almost impossible to capture with the naked eye. Even the steel was completely crushed. This is simply too unbelievable. The amusement park manager's face turned pale. With such a serious accident, his career has been sentenced to death. Even this amusement park will be buried. But fortunately, no one was injured, which is the best outcome. Otherwise, what he will face will be far more than just this. Hie Hie, who had done all this, had already run to the back of the amusement park with Hie Hie. Ha, ha. I'm so tired. Hie Hie supported her hands on her waist and breathed in deep breaths. Brother, what's going on? Why did the pirate ship suddenly fly into the sky? This was the last scene she saw before Hie Hie held her in his arms. A pirate ship with a cartoon version of Captain Jack Sparrow standing on the bow was flying in the air, cutting through the air currents and crashing into them. After this, there was also an inexplicable sound. It seemed like something was roaring. When it rang in my ears, my heart seemed to vibrate at the same time. By the time I came to my senses, I had already been dragged out of the amusement park. Hie Hie looked at the crowd in the amusement park, which was becoming increasingly noisy. Sounds of crying, sighing, and rejoicing gradually spread. People seem to be like this sometimes. When the knife is across the neck, perhaps they can still stare at the person who is about to kill them. But if the blade is withdrawn, the anger that was pent up in my heart dissipated, and my whole body instantly felt soft. All kinds of hidden negative emotions will erupt in an instant. It should be that the amusement park facilities are aging and malfunctioning. It seems that there are no casualties. But let's go further away. Maybe it's not safe yet. After saying that, Hie Hie walked towards the gate of the community. All the onlookers in the community were attracted by the huge crash and began to run towards the scene to watch. In the sea of people, only a pair of siblings were swimming against the current. My brother walked in front, holding his right arm with his left hand inconspicuously. His face was pale and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. The teeth were clenched so tightly that there was even a grinding sound. It seemed to be enduring some severe pain. But his eyes still looked forward firmly. As my sister walked, she would glance at the large turntable behind her which had been turned off. I don't know what emotion was revealed in his eyes. But he always seems a little absent-minded. And when the two left the community, the entire amusement park finally fell into darkness. All that was left was the sound of people talking. At this point, the outing that I had been looking forward to for a long time has been interrupted. As soon as Hie Hie got home, he assigned some homework to Hie Hie. Then he went back to the bedroom. My parents are not at home. They must be working or buying groceries outside. Hie Hie sat on the bed, sweat pouring down like a stream, dripping on the ground and on the back of my hand. He breathed in deep breaths of air. The lights were not on at this time. But in the long night, one can still see the unparalleled majesty reflected by a pair of dragon eyes. The owner of these pupils is Hie Hie. Perhaps even he himself did not realize that the light in his eyes was swaying so arrogantly and freely. It's like a dragon lurking in an endless abyss. So happy. The price he paid was his right hand that was now hanging down powerlessly. It was dark blue and pale, as if all the blood had been drained out in an instant. At this moment, in this room, it's like entering a different world. All particles are controlled and suspended in one position. Just like a few grains of dust that should have fallen to the ground minutes ago. At this time it is floating up and down at a very high frequency. And it keeps shrinking. Final. Disappear from sight. About half a quarter of an hour later, everything returned to normal. Hie Hie lay down on the bed. Only then did he feel the existence of his right hand again. When I looked up, I found that it had returned to its flesh color. Another defect. Hie Hie sighed deeply. It really hurts. The hand seemed to have been suppressed for hundreds of years and was completely numb. I can barely feel the nerves in my right hand. The most uncomfortable moment is when you slowly regain consciousness. The numbness and pain came together, like a bolt of lightning that meandered through countless miles and rushed straight into the heart. But after a while, Hie Hie finally smiled, as if he was laughing at someone. But at least, I'm not powerless. Now we can confirm some things. First, one can trigger the words by just reciting Mandarin. This is probably the help left by the system, and it really solved a lot of problems. Second, I don't know if it's because of the after effects the system mentioned, or because of my own reasons, but it seems that I can't use the word spirit at will, and there will be a certain price. The price this time was the instantaneous loss of blood in his right hand, but it would recover after a while. The approximate time from the amusement park to just now was about a quarter of an hour. It looked more like the blood had been sucked away by someone. And this is only the first time, and there have been few practices, so we don't know what the cost will be the next time we use it. It would be nice if it was just this once. Third, judging from previous practical results, it is indeed worthy of the word supercore. Its power almost completely exceeds that of the royal power, and its pressure increases almost exponentially. After all, it is the force that directly presses wood and steel into one piece. And this skill is not limited to use against Dragonborn. Taking all these factors into consideration, Hie Hie feels that he has made a great profit. At this moment, the scene in the amusement park came back to his mind. He didn't believe this was a coincidence or an accident. Every unexpected thing that seems too reasonable usually hides another more unbelievable fact. Considering the power of the control machine of the pirate ship, even if it was adjusted to the highest gear, or even overloaded, it would never be possible for movement of that magnitude and frequency to occur. Not to mention directly dragging the steel at the connection point into the sky. And the center of the landing point was right in front of him. This made him start to wonder if someone was targeting him. Herzog? Not to mention that he had already figured out Zhang Yan's attitude, there was no way he would attack him. And judging from the methods of that dark strategist, if he wants to get rid of a character he doesn't care about, arrange a few killers or ninjas to quietly wipe them out. There is no way he would die in a way that is closer to an accidental way. But apart from him, there seems to be no one else in this world with whom I can make such an enemy. If I had to find one. That fat doctor? When Hie thought of this person, he found it a little funny. A guy who got beaten up and then asked others to call him God of Wealth. Would you deliberately try to kill your God of Wealth? Of course not. That would mean financial loss, which is unlucky. Chapter 41. My mind is so confused. Hie thought for a long time but still couldn't guess who else wanted to kill him. The light of the bulb is getting weaker and weaker. The thoughts in my mind became more and more confused. When he came to his senses, Hie found himself in the darkness again. The golden dragon pupil was still staring at him intently. And he also stared at this eye. Everything is so natural, as if it has been going on for countless years. What on earth are you? This should have been Hie Hie's problem. But in fact, it is not. In the vast space, this sentence suddenly appeared, and then fell silent. I don't know who asked the question. Ethereal and vast, as if coming from the whole world. But who is he asking? Is there anyone else here? It seems that I am the only one left. Hie Hie was just about to speak. Boom boom boom. It was like bells and drums being struck from outside this space. When it came, it instantly shattered the entire world. What on earth are you? What is it? Hie Hie sat up straight suddenly. I looked around and realized that I was still lying in bed. It seemed like a whole day had passed. This inexplicable question kept echoing in my mind. What? Is there any need to ask? It's a person. Hie Hie found this question indeed a bit strange. But I just thought it was just a dream caused by being too tired yesterday. He took out his Nokia phone from his trouser pocket and checked the time. Friday, May 8, 2009, 4:58. It seems like I got up too early. But Hie still stood up. He doesn't have the habit of taking naps. Then take off your shirt. Then he started doing push-ups. After 50, switch to squats, and after squats, switch to sit-ups. After a round of exercise, nearly an hour had passed. This was a habit he developed in his original world. As the saying goes, a good physique determines a person's future, right? Although Hie was not referring to this sentence at all. It's because moving bricks and picking up wine bottles require a lot of physical effort. One must be strong, and the other must be able to withstand blows. Of course, it's definitely not for this anymore. Instead, he felt that although the physical benefits brought by dragon blood were extremely high, as long as he continued to study and train, he would definitely become stronger. At least it should be a helpful effect. This is why Hie must go to Castle College. He needs to learn the most refined combat skills and techniques. And all the knowledge and theories about those beings. That place has everything about dragons. How to find him, how to fight him, how to kill him. Until you learn how to slay the dragon. He is truly qualified to fight against certain beings on the throne. It was just past 5 o'clock when Hie finished his exercise. So he took a shower, washed his clothes and hung them out to dry. Then he filled the watering can with water and went to the yard to water the vegetables and flowers. At this moment, a bunch of paper scraps suddenly fell beside where Hie was standing. He looked up and saw a hand just retracted. This is not the first time. This has been done many times this week. The things thrown down are also varied: overcooked eggs, peeled bananas, even chewed gum. I believe that anyone who is not blind can see that flowers are planted in this area, right? Even if we take a step back, even a blind person should be able to smell the fragrance of the flowers. And even if these things are not grown here, it shouldn't be its trash can either. Hie had long wanted to go up and see who that person was. Just go. After a rough estimation, it should be the house on the 4th floor on the right. So he picked up the piece of paper, opened the door and walked to the 4th floor. On the way, Hie looked at the ball of paper in his hand. It was almost completely covered with words. It looks like it's something inside the newspaper. And on the side facing him there seemed to be a commendation. So Hie took a few casual glances. On April 27, the murderer of the cesarean section case in Brooklyn Hospital, New York was hacked to death by a teenager. It is reported that the teenager is a Hyuxia national named. That's all there is to see. Hie was not interested in this, but he was willing to call whoever killed the murderer a hero. If he were to encounter someone who was so evil that he should be killed, he would definitely kill him as soon as possible. But the most important thing now is the person who littered. Bang, bang, bang. Hie knocked gently on the door on the 4th floor. He hoped that the matter could be resolved through conversation. After all, this person had not crossed any bottom line. It was a long time before footsteps were heard from inside the door, and they seemed to be in a hurry. Sorry, I'm making breakfast. When the door was opened, it turned out to be a little boy who was about 12 or 13 years old. She was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand. Brother Hie. Before Hie could say anything, the child called out his name. So he instantly recalled the contents of the diary. It seems that there is no such person. You don't have to come to my aid all the time, I can handle it on my own. Help? At this time, Hie remembered that there seemed to be such a sentence written in a diary from the first year of high school. Go help that kid more. Could it be him you are referring to? It's okay. Is there anything I can help with today? Since it was his instruction, then it must make sense. Even though it doesn't make sense, he will try his best to complete it. The little boy couldn't help but touch his hair, seeming a little hesitant. It's okay, go ahead. Hie saw his embarrassment. Thank you, brother. Can you please help me cook some porridge? I have to go and help clean Dad's room. Good. It came out naturally, after all, it wasn't a big deal. But what puzzled him was, would such a little boy, who seemed polite and well-behaved, do something like littering? Obviously not. Hie's heart had already given the answer. He felt that his first impression of people was still very accurate. After entering, I looked around and it seemed to be the same layout as my own home. But the difference may be that their 2 rooms on the right have windows. The little boy greeted Hie and entered a room. I knocked on the door a few times before entering. And Hie helped him cook porridge. As for the issue of throwing away the garbage, we can just sit down and talk about it after the porridge is cooked. Roll. At this moment, a man's rough roar suddenly came from the door the little boy entered. Then there was the sound of something hitting the door. Hie rushed to that room. When I opened the door, the little boy was standing up, rubbing his head. 5 fingerprints are clearly visible on the left cheek. Seeing that it was Hie coming, he still kept smiling. Oh, that's bad. But the tears in his eyes were already shining. There was no light in the room, only the dim sky cast a few faint rays of light through the window onto a man. I saw the man half sitting in front of the window, looking like a savage. His hair had grown to his neck, and his beard grew in clumps like bushes in the rainforest. But that's not his greatest characteristic. He seemed to have lost a foot. One trouser leg fluttered in the wind. Anyway, you shouldn't be like this. Hie was already full of anger. In his opinion, at least since he entered the room, the child had never done anything that would warrant an adult's use of force to punch him and leave fingerprints. But he still tried his best to remain polite and calm. The man didn't even look at Hie, but just stared blankly into the distance outside the window. Just gave a look. His eyes were filled with cruelty and hostility, and he said, as a stranger, Hie, you care too much. Chapter 42. As Hie slowly walked down the stairs, his mood still could not calm down for a long time. There was nothing in that room except a poor man who had been forgotten by society. When he was young, he was a gangster and even a small leader of a gang. I had a girlfriend who got pregnant before marriage. While protecting the place in a bar, a hostile gang suddenly came to cause trouble. There is strength in numbers. So that night, when the police arrived, the man was already lying on the ground covered in blood. It is worth mentioning that among the people caught in the bar at that time, about 7 or 8 were members of their gang. But he was the only one who was hurt. After being rushed to the hospital for treatment, the man's right leg could no longer be healed due to excessive blows and cuts. And it is suspected to be intentional. Multiple hits all in one position. When he recovered a little, he was faced with a court trial. A host of crimes almost buried him. In addition to some fights, there are even serious crimes such as maliciously causing serious injury. As far as he knew, most of these crimes were committed by his rival gangs or even some people in his own gang. He gave a heart-wrenching rebuttal, with tears in his eyes. He begged everyone to help him and he told everyone the truth. But no matter which incident, there is strong evidence pointing to him. Besides, who would believe a man who might have committed so many crimes? Not to mention a member of a criminal gang who is himself on the dark side of society. So after the verdict was announced, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Outside the window, spring and autumn seem like day and night. Time passes by, and 10 years pass in a dream. When he was released from prison, the mountains and seas had changed. He wanted to seek revenge on the people who framed him in the past, but he didn't know where to start. Even if I find it, what can I, a disabled person with one leg missing, do? Interrupted another one. He sat outside the prison wall, looking at the falling snowflakes. Neither sad nor happy. It was summer when we went in, but now it is winter. Is this the color of snow in the daytime? It seems that it can't withstand the long night inside and outside this prison. He seemed to have nowhere else to go. At this time, a little boy wearing a blue and white scarf walked up to him. He looked it over from left to right. Then he clenched his little fist and asked happily, "Are you my dad?" The man then raised his head. "Whose child is claiming to be his relative here? Even if you want to cheat, you shouldn't do it at the prison gate. When will I?" Suddenly, he felt as if his chest was hit by a heavy hammer. Then he slowly raised his head, trembling. Maybe it's because it's too cold. After all, he was only wearing 2 pieces of Jafang brand clothes in this winter. "What's your last name?" The child's face was frozen red, like a ripe apple. But this didn't seem to affect his excitement at all. "My last name is Chen. Are you my father? Mom once said that Dad would come out of the big house today and go home with me." The man couldn't help but reach out and want to touch the child's face. But all this inexplicably made him feel so strange and unreal. He wanted to put a smile on his face. "After all, I haven't laughed in many years. So, how should we smile?" 2 lines of tears had already fallen from his lifeless eyes, slid down his cheeks, and dripped onto the snow that had accumulated on the ground. "Make a small hole." But when he was about to touch it, countless resentful thoughts popped up in his mind. He seemed to have returned to that eternal dark night. Bang! When he was about to touch the child, he suddenly pushed it away. He fell directly more than 1 meter away. The man held his head tightly against his chest. Something in my mind seemed to be about to burst out. He actually wanted to bang his head against something. This might make you feel a lot better. The whole body was so cold that it seemed to freeze the heart as well. At this moment, he suddenly realized that something seemed to be around his neck. When I looked up, I found it was the little boy again. He took off his scarf and tied it around his neck. It was still that brilliant smile, and he was still as happy as ever. "Dad, let's go home." This story was told to Hie Hie by the little boy. He said he liked this kind of life very much. It's much better than before. He was abandoned in kindergarten when he was young, and after he started elementary school, the dean's grandmother gave him a note. There were only 2 titles, a date and a place written on it. And his name. He always thought that it was the dean's grandmother who gave him this name. "Chen Chen, Dad will come out of the big house to pick you up on December 24, 2006. Mom. From then on he looked forward every moment to the day when his father would come out of the big house. So every year on December 24 in the afternoon, he would go there. "What if Dad comes out early?" He asked, "Do you like your father?" He answered as a matter of course I like it. It seems that he is really content with his current life. Then what qualifications do I have to continue interfering? When Hie Hie returned home, he happened to meet Hie Fukeo going upstairs. It's probably time to go to work. But he didn't ask why Hie Hie came down from upstairs. With a nonchalant smile on his face, he seemed to know everything. He just gently reminded him to take advantage of the holiday to help Hie with her math lessons. Hie sighed. "Since it's my father's order, there's nothing I can do about it. This doesn't mean that the brother is inconsiderate of his sister, it's also for her own good. Of course, it would have seemed more real if he hadn't been snickering. Should I assign her 1 or 2 papers today?" When Hie got up, Hie was the only one left at home. Zhang Xinjian said that she was working the middle shift today, and her supermarket was loading new goods today, so she might be back later than usual. "Come and have breakfast after you wash up. I'll go heat up the porridge for you." "Of course it is. It's already past 12 o'clock. It would be strange if it wasn't cold." Hie grabbed her messy hair and yawned loudly. Then he stared blankly at the porridge on the table. A satisfied smile. "Sleep until you wake up naturally, and then you'll have food to eat when you wake up. Well, this is life." Hie picked up the porridge and waved his hand in front of her. One sentence pierced his contented morning. "Oh, it should be noon. After eating, I'll start the special devilish math training." When Hie heard this, she was stunned. If someone just touched her lightly, she would fall to the ground with a bang. But after a while, she finally accepted her fate. His hands and neck were lowered, in a state of disarray. He has to wait 3 minutes to go to the kitchen to heat up the porridge. So he stuck his head out to look at Hie. As expected, he was no longer as high spirits as before. "Hold the toothbrush in your right hand and poke it in and out. The bubbles can drip onto the ground without rinsing your mouth. In general, there is no light in the eyes." Hie smiled helplessly, then went back and stirred the porridge in the pot with a spatula. "If Hie can study well today, I will take her to the birthday party early tomorrow." The voice was neither loud nor soft, and I couldn't tell whether he was talking to himself or to someone else. After a while, footsteps were heard outside the kitchen. Hie Hie smiled calmly and tested the temperature of the porridge. Then he brought it back to the table. At this time, Hie Hie was running out of the room. He holds a pen in his right hand and an exercise book in his left hand. The smile is peaceful and sincere. Brother, where do we start learning? Chapter 43. Day 2 weekend. That was the day of Li Shatong's birthday party. Not long after Hie Hie got up, Hie Hie also got up. This is the first time in Pushan. As soon as I got up, I followed Hie Hie. He went to water the flowers and she went to play with the grass. He cooks and she helps in the kitchen. He went to study, and she find a place to kill time by yourself. She would observe her brother's room every few minutes. It's not that she doesn't like studying. It's just that yesterday's devil training was really horrible. Apart from eating, I spend all my time studying. One question after another hit her head, which was already short of ideas. These were all test questions that Hie Hie had carefully prepared for her. One question can encompass a lot of knowledge. Really, it's too brain-burning. Hie Hie himself held his diary and read it over and over again. Then I started writing. But there was a completely unused piece of paper in the middle. Hie Hie asked why this was the case. But he just smiled and said, write them separately. The first one is more important. I don't understand. Sometimes the top student brother says things that are hard to understand. The most important thing now is to keep a close eye on him. What if he runs away secretly? Of course Hie Hie understood Hie Hie's little thoughts. It means not knowing whether to laugh or cry. In fact, this is not necessary. He had intended to take her there. Her efforts and progress were obvious to all yesterday. He also discussed it with his parents and they agreed to it. Hie Hie wiped the sweat from his forehead. Looking at the results of his battle. Spotless living room, spotless bedroom, spotless kitchen. Nodded with satisfaction. Then a burning gaze from the left shone on him. He checked the time, 4:15. Almost. It's time to meet some people and do some things. Let's go. He responded helplessly to the owner of that gaze. Sure enough, she immediately jumped up with joy. Then he ran to the shoe cabinet to change his shoes. Hie Hie then realized that she was wearing a light pink plaid tweed long-sleeved shirt. The shoes are also sneakers of the same color. Like a delicate butterfly. He seemed prepared. It seems that this girl has really wanted to go for a long time. Yezi, why do you want to attend this birthday party so much? Hie Hie put on his 3 old things, Jafang shoes, a shoulder bag, and a pure white t-shirt. He asked with confusion. But who would have thought that when Hie Hie put on her shoes and turned around, she would see him dressed like this? Instead he asked. Brother, are you planning to go like this? A look of disbelief. This was asked by Hie Hie. Is there something wrong? He even stood up and checked if there was anything dirty on his clothes or pants. Yes, the clothes were just dried yesterday, so they should be clean. What's the matter? Hie Hie covered her forehead. A look of pity on his face. That's your schoolmate who likes you. According to the plot in the movie, you should be like Ichigo in Bleach, and make a shining debut when the time comes. As she spoke, she seemed to think of that scene in her mind. His eyes seemed to be filled with stars, shining brightly. As for Hie Hie, it was obvious that he did not share the same sentiment at all. He seemed to be still digesting her words. No, come on brother, I'll take you somewhere. Hie Hie, who hadn't come to his senses yet, was dragged out the door. After walking for about 10 minutes, the brother and sister arrived at the underground mall in the city center. It turned out that the place Hie Hie was talking about was the clothing section of this underground mall. And she went straight to a store. Show green clothing. It turned out to be a small shop sandwiched between 2 children's clothing stores. Xiao Yu. As soon as she reached the door, Hie Hie shouted towards the store. After a while, a girl with a ponytail and round-framed glasses came out from the compartment. Yezi, why are you looking for me all of a sudden? The person next to you is... She seemed to have to walk closer before she could see the person next to her clearly. Hie Hie, senior. Hie Hie smiled and nodded to indicate his approval. What can I do? I don't know him. Besides, he doesn't even know why he came here. Xiao Yu, aren't you researching international fashion brands? Come, I'll give you a template to use today. Then he pointed at Hie Hie. My brother. This one sentence shocked many people. Ah. Ah. One was sent by Hie Hie and the other was sent by Xiao Yu. One is doubt and the other is amazement. It turned out to be because of this matter. No, 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 I just take a look occasionally, it doesn't count as research. The more the girl spoke, the more excited she became, and the redder her face became, as if someone had exposed some of her hidden side. Ah! Isn't it? This is also for Hie Hie to live in Bungbu. But she still looked thoughtful. She seems to still be thinking about how to reform her brother. Hie Hie couldn't help but sigh when he saw this. It seems that this girl will not give up unless this matter is resolved today. So he walked into the shop by himself. I'll buy myself a new suit of clothes. Anyway, I have to buy it before going to Castle College. Hie Hie put her hands on her hips and nodded silently. A face full of praise. It seems her brother finally came to his senses. In the end, Hie Hie bought himself a light brown ballmark windbreaker, with the same pure white shirt lining. Then I bought a pair of white and brown platform high-top canvas shoes. Once you put on the suit, you look very handsome and decent. This caused Hie Hie and her friend Xiao Yu to applaud and praise. It also attracted several passing customers. Hie Hie himself didn't have any feelings about it, but he just felt that it was indeed more comfortable. I looked at the time and it was already 17:30. After giving the money to the schoolgirl who looked at him with a somewhat dazed look, he took Hie Hie away. Fortunately, they were already in the city center and the Regent Hotel was not far away. It only takes about 10 minutes to walk there. When you stand below the hotel, look up at the towering building. It's like looking through the glass on the surface at someone inside. The light in his eyes gradually deepened. Let's go. Hie Hie came to his senses and looked to the side, wanting to call Hie Hie in. Who knows, people? There was no one in sight within a 10-meter radius. Upon closer inspection, I saw that she had already run quite far away. Hie Hie coughed awkwardly a few times. Then he chased after him. Through the swinging glass door at the hotel entrance. A well-dressed waiter came over. Sir, miss, welcome to the Regent Hotel. Do you have a reservation? Hie Hie was still looking around curiously at the furnishings. After all, this was her first time coming to a place that was generally considered high-end. In fact, this is not the first time Hie Hie has come to such a place. In the bars of the original world, there was such a business. It's about bringing drunk people home safely. The remuneration for each trip varies. Some people, perhaps because they are drunk, may even give you hundreds of dollars directly. Others may just pretend to be asleep and not pay a penny at all. He had once helped a thin foreign young man wearing gold-rimmed glasses to return to a place that in his world could be called a star hotel. In fact, it wasn't something Hie Hie wanted to help. If he hadn't seen that he was about to be targeted by a few kidney thieves. That day was also the first time Hie Hie saw US dollars. After the young man delivered it, he directly gave him a 100 yuan Benjamin Franklin bill. When Hie Hie was about to leave, he said something inexplicably, wherever your heart leads you, you will go there. Life is like a journey, you can only sail with a reed. But since his back was turned to him, I couldn't tell whether he was talking in his sleep or what. But before closing the door, Hie Hie still whispered, thanks. It didn't seem to travel very far amid the wind, dust, and car horns. Or has it never happened at all? Chapter 44. Hello, we are here to attend a birthday party. Li Shatong. Hie Hie nodded slightly to the waiter and said politely. He paused and added the name. After all, a hotel like this would definitely host more than 1 or 2 parties every day. State your purpose accurately and quickly to save everyone's time. Upon hearing this, the waiter looked at the brother and sister intently. As if confirming something, he asked with a smile, excuse me, is this Mr. Hie Hie and his sister? This question caught Hie Hie off guard. But there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. Given the service attitude of this hotel, it is natural for them to know about the incoming guests in advance. Yes. He had no intention of delving into this issue, as more important things were yet to come. Upon hearing this, the waiter slightly turned sideways, then opened his right palm and pointed slightly to an elevator on the left. If you don't look carefully, you might mistake it for a mirror. The doors were wiped clean and shiny. Please, Miss Lee specifically asked me to bring the 2 guests with me. So that's how it is. Hie Hie grabbed Hie Hie, who was still looking around, and followed him over. Not to mention, even though it's just a hall, its decoration is like that of a European royal castle. Gorgeous and elegant. No wonder the little girl was so excited when she saw it for the first time. The elevator stopped at the business floor on the 8th floor. As soon as the door opened, there was a straight light golden passage. The ground was soft to the touch, probably a carpet. Hie Hie walked on it happily. The hands and feet are swaggering, like a little elk bouncing across the ice. The waiter brought them to a tall, wide door inlaid with gold and engraved with red. Then just pull it outward with your right hand and it will open easily. The sounds of noise and laughter from inside came over instantly. At this time, Hie Hie became inexplicably much more honest. Stand by Hie Hie's side. She even timidly pulled the corner of his sleeve. She's still a little girl after all. I am about to go to a strange place and face a group of strangers. There will always be some confusion. Hie Hie smiled and patted her head, then motioned for her to follow him in. At this time, some people inside had already noticed the door opening. Everyone is more or less curious about who it is. But when they found out that they were just two good-looking boys and girls who were dressed poorly, I lost interest in an instant. Then he went back to talking about his own things. The brother and sister had just entered the room. Then I saw a 7-layer pure white cake in the middle of a space that was almost the size of a lecture hall. There are 2 lifelike wings inserted at both ends of the 3rd layer of cake. It seems like a gift from God. And the reality seems to be similar, from Cafe Pouch Kine. A place where a sweet kingdom is created. Hie Hie looked at the tall and big cake and was completely fascinated by it. A question can't help but arise. Is the top layer tastier or the bottom layer tastier? But after a while you will get the answer yourself. Need I say more? Of course you will know after trying both. Senior brother Hie Hie. At this time, the brother and sister heard a familiar voice again. There was a hint of disbelief in his tone. Hie Hie looked in the direction of the sound. It was Li Shatong. She was wearing a pure white Sabrina dress today. There are also several elegant and beautiful peacocks embroidered on the fabric at the hem and waist of the skirt. Their skirts are also blooming, matching her quiet and elegant temperament. It's so unforgettable. It seemed that the people around were seeing such a delicate person for the first time. Applaud and praise from the heart. Although, in the eyes of the people they praise, there was only one boy who gave her a polite smile. Happy birthday! When Li Shatong approached, Hie Hie expressed his congratulations from the bottom of his heart. Her face flushed again. It seemed that every word this person said could move her. Thank you, senior. This sentence was said very naturally but lightly, like a ripple before a big wave. Senior, do you think I look good today? Is this seeking your own advice? So Hie Hie took a half step back and took a closer look. Then he smiled and said, this dress is decent and elegant. It suits you very well. Is this a compliment to the person or to the clothes? It doesn't matter. Li Shatong was so happy after hearing this that steam almost came out of her head. The roots of his ears have turned red. His brows were lowered, as if he was hiding his joy at the moment. After all, a lady should not show her emotions on her face. That's what the housekeeper said. Senior, please look around first. The party will start soon. As she spoke this, her speech became faster and faster, as if she spoke slower the words at the end of the sentence would escape. In fact, she escaped on her own. I'm going to touch up my makeup first. Having said that, he walked back. The chatter and flattery from the people around her did not register with her at all. She just wanted to find a place where no one was around and calm herself down. Before Hie Hie could even say anything, the girl turned and left. Seems very anxious. Did I say something wrong just now? Only then did he notice that Hie Hie was still looking at the cake like a rabbit seeing a carrot. I couldn't help but hold my forehead, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This girl. So Hie Hie took her to the French pastry chef who was working on the cake. Hello, when was this cake prepared? The pastry chef would not neglect the teenager who was treated like this by the party host. Tell the truth, this cake was made by Cafe Pouchkin's chief pastry chef, and the first cut will be made after the fireworks display at midnight tonight. After listening, Hie Hie nodded as expected, and then looked at Hie Hie. Did you hear that, greedy cat? Hie Hie was just wondering what her brother was doing. It turns out that the real killer move is here. Who can tolerate this? I heard it, brother. She can bear it, because she will get to eat it sooner or later anyway. Hie Hie looked at the expectation in the girl's eyes and finally sighed. Excuse me, can I eat anything else besides the cake? He was referring to the pastries and food that covered an area of dozens of square meters. We have egg tarts, cheese, mousse, and black tea. Even in more remote areas, there are steaks, sandwiches, salads, and more. The pastry chef had just pulled out a row of steaming English muffins, scones, from the toaster below and placed them on a silver tray. Then when Er smiled, with a mellow feeling like a donut coated with chocolate beside him. Of course, sir. It's just that the Hyuxia he spoke was a little clumsy. Hie Hie also smiled to show his understanding. Then he looked at Hie Hie, who had listened to the entire conversation and was already impatient. Go ahead. As soon as she said this, she immediately picked up the muffin that had just come out of the oven at a temperature of dozens of degrees. Fortunately, she knew to wrap tin foil around the area where her fingers touched. It can be said that I was not completely overwhelmed. Brother, do you want it? She took a piece of muffin in her left hand and took a bite, then took another piece with her right hand and put it close to Hie Hie's mouth. Very delicious, crispy, and crunchy. Hie Hie looked at her raised mouth, and she seemed to be humming some ballad softly, as if this moment was enough to make her feel happy. So he took the muffin and tasted it. Then he happened to see Hie Hie's expectant eyes and smiled unconsciously. Delicious. Chapter 45. The brother and sister sat in a corner where there were not many people, savoring the slight sweetness lingering between their teeth. It's not that the food is so attractive. But after looking around and finding no one I knew, there was no need to deliberately strike up a conversation with anyone. Even though they always seem a little lonely in the eyes of others. This feeling seems to be very common. Just like during Hyuxia New Year. Others gathered together playing mahjong or cards, while others sat alone playing with their cell phones. They will spontaneously think that he may be isolated. Since he is isolated, there must be a reason, so it is better not to have any contact with him. Even so, he might just want to play a few games of bomber by himself. In his eyes at this moment, other people might be the noisiest. This world is all about individual joy, and everyone has his or her own obscurity and brightness in his or her heart. It's just that there will always be people who make unwarranted speculations. Hello sir, oh you, and beautiful lady. At this time, a man wearing narrow gold-rimmed glasses, wearing a platinum handmade custom suit, with his hair combed neatly and exquisitely on both sides, even a little shiny, walked up to Hie Hie with a smile. In his right hand, he was holding a goblet, the red wine in it was shaking slightly, clear and tempting. With the outer appearance, he really looks like a gentleman. What's up? Hie Hie looked at the strange man who suddenly came to talk to him, and he was not on guard. All I can say is that he is just normally cold towards strangers. But this did not seem to dampen the man's interest. Instead, he moved the red wine in his hand slightly forward. It was still that smile, but it was clear that it was only skin deep. My last name is Sue, from Sue's department store. I heard that you two are specially invited by Miss Lee, so you must be very distinguished. I just came back from studying abroad at Columbia University. I haven't tasted domestic red wine for a long time. It's really sweet and mellow, right? When he said the last sentence, his eyebrows raised slightly. It was as if he was afraid that others couldn't see that he was being provocative. Hie Hie had a blank expression on his face, but he actually found it very funny. Here it comes, the person who feels threatened. I'm sorry, I don't drink. This is the truth. Although he often worked in bars, he had no money to buy alcohol. How can you pick up bottles and give people a ride home for money when you are drunk? You have to know that these profits accounted for the bulk of Hie Hie's daily expenses at that time. Besides, if he got drunk, he wouldn't have any money to give to the person who took him home. The city in the early morning is not only bustling. Behind the light, there is an even deeper darkness. Drunk people seem much more likely to step into darkness. Even though sometimes he really wants to let himself be in chaos. But it can't. He always had to walk alone. When the wind came, he walked slowly. When it rained, he walked to the side. When it thundered, he covered his ears and walked. Life, sometimes, once it becomes chaotic, everything may be cleared out. He can't withstand such a disaster. The gentleman with gold-rimmed glasses seemed to have gotten the answer he wanted most, and the smile on his face was genuine. True joy. Hold your head high. It seemed as if he had found something that made him look superior. Oh. Sorry, I made a mistake. This glass of wine doesn't seem to be domestically produced, but rather Caesar Paradise Castle Bordeaux dry red wine. He seemed a little surprised and annoyed, but the smile between his brows could not hide his pride and complacency. When he said this, his voice seemed much louder, perhaps because he was too annoyed. This caused many people around who were chatting about their own topics to look here. He seemed to have noticed this, too. Or has he achieved his goal? He raised the red wine in his hand slightly and took a sip. His face was full of intoxication. What a great wine! It's a pity that you haven't tasted it. As he spoke, he stood on tiptoe and turned around elegantly. Finally, he gave Hie Hie a slight bow. There was clearly no hat on her head, but it was inexplicably twisted from her head, then made an elegant turn in front of her body and rested on her chest. Everyone has his own circle. I don't think I can have a good chat with you too. Goodbye. When he said this, his eyes were deliberately fixed on Hie Hie's eyes. There is contempt everywhere, and everyone knows what it means. Then he walked towards the group of people who were dressed more elegantly. It looks like a victorious fighting CK, and also like a platinum-colored ball that is filled with air. Please wait a moment. At this time, Hie Hie, who had not responded, suddenly spoke. And a look of confusion on his face. The man paused when he heard the voice, seeming a little surprised by this sudden change. But it did not affect his noble gentleman image. What's the matter, sir? If what I said just now offended you, I apologize. Having said that, he still stood tall. Hie Hie touched his head, seeming to find it difficult to speak. But he finally made up his mind, and then said inexplicably, about what you just said, Bordeaux red wine. It's like this. Miss Lee told me this before. She didn't want to celebrate her birthday too extravagantly, so she didn't order any red wine from abroad, let alone that Kai Chateau. As he spoke, his voice seemed to get a little louder. Mr. Su, who returned from studying abroad at Fudan University, did you taste the wrong thing? At first, I thought you actually tasted it. When Hie Hie said this, he shook his head slightly, as if he felt sorry for the man's wrong guess. I didn't expect you didn't stick to your first idea. At this time, some people around were already laughing secretly. The laughter pierced the man's ears like silver needles. His face turned red and veins popped out where the temples of his glasses rested. How so? He just went there after asking the waiter who was carrying the wine tray. It can't be wrong. But he didn't dare say anything else. Breaking through this layer on the spot, even if there is only a 1 in 10,000 chance, but if it is really as that little devil said. Isn't he embarrassing the Lee family? He doesn't have the courage. Then admit your mistake? He glanced at Hie Hie not far away, and saw that he was still looking at him with concern. I couldn't help but get angry. The sweet and mellow red wine in his hand was shaken so much that a lot of it splashed out and stuck to the cuffs of his suit. Absolutely not. Bang. The man slowly placed the glass back on the table, steadily. The sound is neither loud nor soft. He looked at Hie Hie with a smile, his tone still gentle and natural. It turns out I tasted the wrong thing. Thanks for correcting me. He chose this after all. Because there is no other choice. Choosing the wrong enemy would be his greatest folly. But it is also the greatest luck. At least, this person seems to be satisfied with the result. Just as he said, Hie Hie has turned back. There was no further development on this. Actually, it's not that there is no follow-up, but Hie Hie suddenly felt that he seemed to have exaggerated a bit. Although Li Shatong was not present at the time, they could say anything they wanted, and they certainly didn't dare to ask. But even so, it's not good to push people too far. The man just wanted to breathe a sigh of relief and then leave. He didn't think he had the nerve to ignore the discussions around him. At this moment, a sudden voice appeared again. Hey, man with gold-rimmed glasses. Remember to wash your suit. If the red wine can be washed off, ha ha ha. It turned out to be Hie Hie. She had been engrossed in desserts and didn't pay any attention to this person at all. Because she instinctively felt that this person was a scoundrel. Why? There is no reason, it's just the beautiful girl's sixth sense. But since her brother has started to fight, how can she be left out? When the man with gold-rimmed glasses heard this, he felt so aggrieved that he almost cried. He turned around, opened the door and ran away. At this time, almost all the guests understood one thing. This brother and sister not only have a complicated relationship with the Lee family. And he is not a simple person either. in a sandwich area about half the size of the venue away from Hie Hie. On a stool not too far from the crowd. The girl with dark red hair was holding a bacon sandwich. His eyes were full of amusement, as if he had found something interesting. She was fiddling with a pink hairpin in her hand. Chapter 46. Hie Hie sat quietly on the stool, holding a French fry sandwich in his hand. This was just forced upon me by Hie Hie. The reason was that it would be embarrassing for her to eat alone. Although the fact is that this girl has almost tried all the styles. Hie Hie was quite happy with it. Since it's a buffet, why not eat? So he took a bite of the sandwich in his hand. Crunchy and a little sweet. It's not delicious, but it's good for filling your stomach. He felt that now was the opportunity. Let Hie Hie stay here by herself for a while. Faced with the dazzling array of food, she seemed to have no energy to pay attention to her brother. After the farce that just happened, I guess no one would dare to be sarcastic anymore. So, it's time to head to the presidential suite on the top floor. There is the person I want to meet. Hie Hie took the last bite of his sandwich, wiped it on the napkin beside him, and then stood up to leave. At this time, a waiter with a smiling face slowly walked over, with his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding a silver tray with a goblet on it filled with a quarter of a cup of red wine. "Hello sir, this is the red wine a lady asked me to bring you. There are words on the bottom of the glass that she wants you to see." "Miss?" Hie Hie was a little confused. Apart from his sister, he only recognized Li Shutong at the party. "Although I don't quite recognize it." But he still picked up the glass of red wine and held it between his fingers. There was indeed a note underneath. It's not a note, but it looks more like the outer packaging of some product. When you pick it up, you can feel the texture of plastic. It's true. Hie Hie turned the paper over and saw only 3 words written on it. And the handwriting is somewhat sloppy. But when he saw it, he drank the red wine in his right hand in one gulp. The degree seems to be quite high. Otherwise, how could it burn from the throat all the way into Hie Hie's heart? He just threw the note into the trash can decorated like flowers on the table next to him. Then he walked straight to the door. His eyes were full of determination and resolve. The young man's courage may be demonstrated at this moment. When he had left, the door slowly closed. The pieces of paper also floated from the air and fell to the bottom of the bucket. The characters on the upper side are just a name. Amusement Park. After Hie Hie opened the door, he put his hands in his pockets and walked slowly along the long corridor. No need to go too fast. Because someone will be waiting for him at the end. Those 3 short words almost explained, he was discovered. Was the clue to the accident in the amusement park in which no one was injured finally discovered by someone? But this doesn't seem quite reasonable. Was it just a coincidence that someone saw it? There were a lot of people there at that time, how could they have found me so quickly? And why would the showdown happen here? The person at the end of the road is actually a friend. Thinking of this, the light in Hie Hie's eyes began to change. It seemed as if something was released. Some things were locked inside. Still an enemy. When he was about to turn the corner, a hand reached out extremely quickly. And the target is his throat. Although Hie Hie was still surprised when he saw this, it was still within his expectations. He decisively stepped back to avoid the attack. Then he immediately mobilized all his strength and rushed forward suddenly. His right hand instantly grabbed the man's arm and pulled it hard. But there was no real feeling of using any force at all. I just felt like it was the tune in the court dance. But what he caught was just a fleeting cloud. So Hie Hie immediately exerted his strength again. Like a discus thrower, he threw it to the side. This seemed to have exerted some strength. A figure was thrown directly into the air by him and flew half a circle. The dark purple skirt danced in the air like a nimble butterfly. The moon-white silk shirt also added a touch of pure night to the scene. Ding! With a slight sound, it finally landed quietly on the light golden ground, with its back facing Hie Hie. Just like a butterfly finding a magnolia flower and gently landing among its flowers. Only the back is left to the viewer. But what is clearly visible is that this person's hair. That stunning red color, not bad, young man. A light and lively voice spread into the ears, and the visitor slowly turned around. Hie Hie looked at the person in front of him, but he opened his mouth several times but couldn't say anything. It was as if all the strength was suddenly drained away, and the fists that had been clenched tightly just now drooped to the sides without me noticing. The whole person seemed to be struck by lightning, and the sight in front of his eyes was reduced to only the silhouette of one person. He almost felt like he was dreaming. That girl, why is she here? Yes, this is very untrue. But a name will still come out of your mouth. Draw. But what you say, is it true? The girl in front of me smiles so brilliantly. Like an angel holding a blade of holy light. The most eye-catching thing is the eyes, as bright as stars, and the eyebrows flying. Yeah, so spiritual. Hie Hie slowly closed his mouth. His eyes closed for a long time before opening. It is hard to explain why there is such indifference between his brows. He looked at the girl in front of him. Yes, how could it be her? Not at all. Excuse me, what can I do for you? Hie Hie spoke in a calm tone, as if nothing had happened just now. It's like there's no emotion at all. Maybe that's the case. At this moment, he was actually furious. I really want to punch myself twice with all my strength. I really want. Give that protagonist a good beating. Why? It is true that I feel unfair for that girl. It's for him, and it's also true that I feel ashamed of what I did just now. He couldn't say he had any special feelings towards the person in front of him. If you must say, she is just a little witch who can't quite figure out her own feelings. That person seemed to be somewhat interested in Hie Hie's attitude. He looked at Hie Hie quietly for a long time with a scrutinizing smile, and then suddenly smiled coldly. You are the boy from the amusement park, right? Get straight to the point. I have been to an amusement park, but that has nothing to do with you, right? Since we already know who the person opposite us is, that's enough. Just right. Delivered to your door. Yes, it is related. Have you applied to study abroad at Castle College? Hie Hie was not surprised by this development. Since they knew what he had done, they must have investigated him thoroughly. Yes, how did you know? Just take advantage of her own trick and lure her into the trap. The person opposite smiled brightly and raised his right hand. His thumb was pointed directly at himself and his left hand was on his waist. I am from Castle College. After school starts, I will be your senior sister. Hie Hie felt a little happy. Judging from what she said, it seems that Castle Academy's attitude towards herself is acceptance. This saves him from having to put in a lot of effort. Come on, Junior, follow me to meet the instructor. She seemed somewhat happy and walked forward on her own. He gestured for Hie Hie to follow. Passionate and full of light. Just like a big sister, she has great appeal. Hie Hie didn't feel anything about it and followed slowly. He only did it for his own purposes. The man walked in front of a direct elevator, pressed the up arrow and the door opened. Standing in front of the elevator door, he seemed to suddenly think of something and looked at Hie Hie again. Her smile is still so brilliant. There was still some threat at this time. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you, my name is Chen Motong, but you have to call me senior sister from now on, okay? I'm 1 grade older than you. Hie Hie just nodded silently and followed him into the elevator. He glanced calmly at the figure reflected in the elevator door. For some reason I couldn't help but feel like I was in a dream. Obviously. 2 completely different people. Chapter 47. The elevator quickly rose to the top floor of the building. With a ding sound, the door opened. What comes into view seems to be the interior. The extremely exquisite and luxurious decoration shows the luxury of this room everywhere. Nyanyo skipped out, picked a seedless grape on the table and put it into his mouth. A burly old man with grey hair was sitting in the hall, staring intently at the TV screen. There was a pirate ship inside that suddenly crashed to the ground, and a young man with a shoulder bag raised his hand towards the direction where the ship fell. Just like the heroes summoning armor in some special effects dramas. The old man frowned slightly, obviously confused about this. Anyone who is not some person who is deliberately deceiving himself and sees this scene can clearly see that this is not normal. The moment the young man stretched out his hand, he must have muttered something. Of course, we couldn't hear what was being said through the surveillance, but the guy from the Science and Technology department in the college was able to find out. It is dragon language. That is the spirit of words. Quite a powerful word spirit. This must be related to the throbbing in their blood that they felt earlier. But here's where the confusion comes in. With such power and destructive force, the purity of the dragon blood in the bloodline must be extremely high. So how is it possible that there was no information in the college's database before? This could not possibly be the fault of the person who collected the data. They never slack off when it comes to matters related to dragons. You have to know that the purpose of their coming here is, firstly, for that little kid, and secondly, to select people with dragon blood for the academy based on the information in the database. Besides, with Eva here, even a 1 in a billion chance should be eliminated. To be honest, this is a very unscientific thing. But, many things are not scientific. Now that the facts are in front of us, instead of thinking about where the mistake was, it is better to consider when to go to the boy's home to invite him. Although it is still unclear what kind of words it is. But the force that can directly press a pirate ship made of molten steel into paper must be extremely strong. And he seemed to have learned how to use it. Without receiving any teaching. The old man couldn't help but stretch out his right hand to stroke his beard under his nose, with the corners of his mouth rising. Seems to be in a pretty good mood. Then he picked up a folder on the table and started flipping through it. Even with his good memory, he had already memorized every word. It contains all the information about the boy on the screen. From birth, what awards have you won? Changes in height and weight each year. Evaluation in the eyes of teachers and friends. Rescued dozens of people during a typhoon. Even when have you ever received a love letter from a girl? Everything is recorded clearly. Those who don't know might think it is an autobiography. But what is certain is that this young man is undoubtedly an extremely outstanding and noble person. Whether it is character or knowledge. This is his assessment of it. As I was flipping through the pages, I returned to the home page. I looked at the photo in the upper right corner and saw a young boy with a bright smile. What an excellent child! The burly old man couldn't help but whisper to himself. Are you really that good? Professor Guderian. At this moment, a female voice suddenly sounded behind Guderian. Even without turning around, he could tell it was that clever girl. No, where have you been playing now instead of reviewing the new students with Yaji and Yesheng? Although he didn't expect her help before he came. However, Nyanyo did not get away with it as usual. Instead he laughed Hie Hie. Then he said righteously, I didn't go there to play, I went there to help you, and. Guderian slowly closed the folder in his hand and decided to go to the boy's house immediately. He had known the address before. It's a good opportunity to invite this girl along. As for the help she mentioned? Let's just forget it. And. Guderian continued as she said. As he spoke, the burly old man stood up, almost 2 meters tall. He planned to leave at any time. Besides, I found the person you wanted to see. Nyanyo folded his arms across his chest, his chin slightly raised, looking like a great hero. Someone you want to meet? The person he wanted to see most now. Except for that poor kid. It was just a figure on the TV screen, flattening steel with one hand. He didn't think that this girl would go out of her way to capture one of them. Find it. Guderian adjusted the tie of his suit, which was a gentleman's decency. Not to mention meeting your future students. But when he turned around, the aura he had just created disappeared instantly. A face full of joy and solemnity. He strode towards someone at the door like a sturdy polar bear. His hands fell directly on the man's shoulders. Hello, Hie Hie. The old man looked at the young man in front of him with bright eyes, full of joy. Is this what Hawaii people often say, after all the darkness comes a new world? Hie Hie's shoulders were all pressed down a little. I have to say that this old man, who doesn't look his age, is really strong. It should be Guderian. But from this sentence and his attitude, it can be seen that there is basically no problem in entering Castle College. Hello. Only then did Hie Hie truly breathe a sigh of relief. At least for now, everything is going well. One step closer to your goal. Guderian laughed and put his arm around Hie Hie's shoulders, then took him to sit at the Gaius wood dining table in the hall. Excuse me, are you the tutor of Castle College? Do you know my name because my application has arrived? Hie Hie intends to take the initiative first. Before coming here, he had already thought about all possible problems and possibilities. But it's always a good idea to get the first move. Guderian asked Nono to turn down the volume of the TV. At this time, she was already sitting on the sofa watching late-night show. Jimmy Fallon is still delivering his overly obvious sarcasm. Although why we can search for programs from the other side of the ocean here is also a question. Let me introduce myself. I am Professor Heinz Günther Guderian, who teaches historical genealogy at Castle Academy. Our school has indeed received your application, and because of your excellence, it has been approved by all members of the school. Actually, that's not the case. He hasn't even told the principal yet. But there is no need to ask. He believes in his own vision. This young man will definitely grow up to be someone who can amaze everyone in the future. He even had an inexplicable premonition. This young man possesses a power related to destiny. Of course, this is just an inexplicable feeling. No one will use it as proof. But let's not talk about the amazing power of words, just talk about the fact that he dared to save people in the typhoon named Dandelion. He already had a pass to Castle College. Hie Hie smiled slightly. This is exactly what he wanted. However, some things are better to be exposed as early as possible. Thank you, but... Hie Hie's eyes suddenly became sharp, and he deliberately glanced at the TV and Nyonyo on the sofa. How did your school find me? Also, the surveillance video on TV. Guderian took a sip of the tangerine tea in his hand. He likes the taste of this tea. There is a natural feeling. And it's good for memory. So that I will not forget some things that still exist in the world but should have become extinct long ago. He was delighted by the boy's caution and sharpness. So, it might be a good idea to make everything clear now. Haha, it's okay to talk about this later. Before that, I have a question, which can be regarded as a small test. Do you believe there are dragons in this world? The awkward and even difficult hyuxia spoken by this burly old man even sounded a little funny. However, the three people present stopped almost at the same time. Just because of a legendary name, Dragon. Chapter 48. Believe. Clear, natural, and powerful. There was no change in Hie Hie's expression, but the words he spoke made the person in front of him feel complicated. Logically speaking, would an ordinary high school student answer this question so decisively and firmly? The certainty in his eyes. Something hidden seems to be revealing the answer. Oh? What makes you believe that? The smile on Guderian's face grew wider. Apparently Hie Hie's answer was what he wanted to hear. But I still continued asking. For no other reason. Just because he inexplicably felt that there might be a better answer. This was the feeling the person in front of him gave him. Just like the boy with burning eyes in the academy. Nothing, but just believe. Hie Hie sat upright on the stool, and it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. The volume of the TV not far away has become very low. It even sounds a little vague. When Guderian heard this answer, he seemed to be more determined in some of his ideas. Really? Really? He seemed more like he was talking to himself. He stood up and walked around the table. Walking to the other end of the table, he reached his right hand into the small ice bucket on top. Wow! With the sound of ice being poked. He then took out 2 bottles of beer. Still snowflakes? Want a drink? Hie Hie looked at the beer in Guderian's hand and was naturally very familiar with it. This is the most common type in bars. People with tattered clothes and dull eyes will drink. This allows them to temporarily forget the pain. Even people who are dressed normally and have tears in their eyes will drink it. This will give them the courage to move forward. People who are elegant and dressed in designer clothes may also drink it. This can make them feel superior. What Hie Hie did was to wait quietly for them to finish drinking and then quickly put it into the bag. With just 2 cents, you can gain a lot in one night. This is with the permission of the bar owner. In his words, garbage out, why not? In the heart of a young boy trapped in front of his daily lunch. He would just be grateful. Because tomorrow seems to have light again. Thank you, I don't drink. Hie Hie had no interest in these things. What he wanted to know was. That's what the old man is going to say next. Guderian didn't say much when he saw this. He just bent the bottle cap with his right hand. Then pour it into the cup beside. It was the one who had drunk the tangerine tea earlier. It's a rather peculiar way of drinking. Sorry, forgive an old man for not having many hobbies. As he said this, he picked up the cup and took a sip. The snow-white foam still clung to his neatly combed beard. Hie Hie just sat there quietly, watching him eat one bite after another. It seemed like both of them were waiting. It also seemed like no one knew how to start. Hie Hie, do you think this world is real? The person being asked remained silent, just waiting for the speaker to continue. Everything that follows may overturn too many of your perceptions, but please believe. No one here is crazy, or rather, the world is crazy. The old man drank 1 cup after another, pouring 1 cup after another. The snow-white hops on the beer also floated and exploded one after another. The final power resounds between lips and teeth. As he put it. The falsehood of the world and Castle Academy, buried deep in history. Even though Hie Hie was mentally prepared to listen. But every word still seems like the fireworks shooting into the sky from the building next door during the spring festival. Explosion. The inside is full of bright red. This is the reality of this world. As the lingering sound of the last sentence faded away, Guderian also drank the last sip of beer in his glass. He didn't look at the boy in front of him. Obviously, he needed to digest this information first. And that is exactly the case. Hie Hie was already surprised by the huge amount of information. The twin thrones. Bronze and fire, earth and mountains, ocean and water, sky and wind. There is even more on top of that. White King, Black King. And the protracted war between humans and dragons. Although I already knew about it in that book. But when you really hear the whole picture, it's still hard not to be shocked by this. There was a long silence afterwards. Even though it was less than 10 minutes. Genius on the left, madness on the right, or just keep going straight ahead. Guderian was sitting on the sofa. His hands rested on his knees, his face solemn and serious. Hie Hie, how are you leaving? How to get there? Wasn't it already decided? From the moment you step into this world, there has never been the slightest wavering. The young man in front of me, who looked a little thin, suddenly raised his head. The smile was full of determination and courage to face death. Please, let me join Castle Academy. Guderian was extremely happy to see this. He picked up the beer on the table and drank it directly from his mouth. Then he picked up a bottle and handed it to Hie Hie. But he seemed to remember something and scratched his head with a smile. Then he started drinking again. The previous image of a classical gentleman is gone. The final result is, the old man drank himself to death. Then he lay down on the sofa and fell asleep snoring. As for Hie Hie, he was already standing in the elevator. On the side, there is no. Are you going out? Then why did nothing happen after he pressed the floor button? Then the result is obvious. So Hie Hie asked directly. Excuse me, is there anything else? When he asked this question, the elevator had already descended to the 8th floor. With a ding sound, the elevator door opened. But neither of them moved. Until the elevator closed naturally again. You, what exactly are you? Nyonyo, who had been silent before, finally spoke the first sentence. To be precise, it's the first question. But Hie Hie seemed to be suddenly electrocuted. What am I? I seem to have heard this question somewhere before. Oh, it seems like I was in a dream. In front of that huge golden dragon eye, someone asked this inexplicable question. Who am I? Need I say more? I'm Hie Hie. His eyes were fixed on the elevator door that had just closed. Obviously there is no interest in this issue. Your school should have understood me a long time ago. After saying that, he pressed the open button of the elevator. When the door just opened a crack in the middle, a hand pressed the elevator's close button again. As soon as Hie Hie took the first step, someone stepped forward and closed the elevator door. And also standing in front of the keys. Only now did he truly look at the person in front of him. What does this mean? There was no one else, it was Nono who was asking the question. The dark red girl was now leaning against the button. His eyes were fixed on Hie Hie. It seems to be on guard against some unpredictable mystery. Before, I didn't have enough phenomena to profile, but through your communication with Professor Guderian, I have obtained quite a lot of information. She suddenly began to speak. It turns out there was a purpose from the beginning. But Hie Hie remained calm and said nothing. It seems that there is nothing worth seeing. But the interesting thing is that the person I profiled is you. And the Hie Hie in the information. But he is not alone at all. His eyes are as deep as a sharp blade, like snow edges on ice. The words were like thunder, splashing waves in the rivers. Hie Hie's brows couldn't help but frown slightly. My heart is like a huge wave rolling. Unexpectedly, she was able to profile to this extent in just half an hour. But this did not hinder Hie Hie's thinking. He gently pushed away Nono who was standing in front of the button with the back of his hand. Then he walked forward on his own. When the elevator door was about to close again, he slowly turned around and looked at the girl still standing in the elevator. I don't know what kind of emotion is contained in his eyes. Let people watch. It was full of sorrow. Some things will disappear, memories, mountains, seas, and the former, I. Chapter 49. When Hie Hie walked quickly to the door of the party venue. I'm somewhat anxious. Because it should have been more than an hour since he left. The leaves are still inside. It's not that she's afraid that someone would dare to do anything to her, but it's just not very reasonable for a person to suddenly disappear for such a long time without any reason. What's more, it will make people worry. Hie Hie pushed the door open with his hand, and then looked towards the place where the brother and sister were sitting before. Fortunately, there. And he was smiling happily. Oh, I almost forgot, my sister is a heartless girl. There was another girl sitting next to her. Li Shatong. She was holding a cup of black tea in her hand. The surface of the cup is clear and transparent, calm and without any waves. Just like the sun setting in the west, it looks dreamy. He kept smiling as he watched Hie Hie, who was saying something excitedly beside him. Occasionally nod, occasionally respond. When Hie Hie walked up to them, he found that the missing person had returned. Brother, where did you go just now? You left such a lovely little sister here alone. Hie Hie looked at this guy walking towards her slowly with his hands in his pockets. He rushed over and punched him in the chest. To be honest, if Hie Hie hadn't practiced before, he would have been killed by this. This little girl really does work hard when she says she is working hard. Or are all beautiful girls this strong? Senior. Li Shatong also stood up, and ripples appeared on the surface of the cup of red tea that he had just put down. Even a few light red water droplets jumped up and then fell down, breaking the tranquility of the tea surface, again and again. When Hie Hie looked over, the girl quickly turned her eyes away and her face turned red. This really made him feel a little at a loss as to what to do. It seemed like her face turned red every time they met. It's like the sun reflected on the sea. The red color is particularly eye-catching among the sparkling waves. In the end, Hie Hie did not answer Hie Hie's question, but just evaded it temporarily. After all, about the upcoming separation. Bang, bang, bang. When night falls. In the distance, bunches of fireworks are flying up from somewhere. It flashes and explodes, and disappears brilliantly. Everyone gathered in front of the huge French window. A glow appeared on their faces. Everyone was cheering for this colorful feast. And Li Shatong stood in the middle. Thousands of brilliant lights flashed in his eyes. Her smile was so charming. Happy birthday! As the crowd cheered, the brilliance of the fireworks reached its peak. Blast through the heavy darkness. It seems to indicate a sunny tomorrow. Yes, it's midsummer already. It was almost 12:30 in the morning when the party ended. The brother and sister walked slowly on the way home. Hie Hie walked in front, with a look of satisfaction on her face. With both hands and feet, he strides across the squares on the ground. The cake just now was really to her liking. I ate 3 large plates in one go. This is how you digest food. Hey, brother, I'm just asking, do you think Senior Li will hold this party again next year? Wow, I just finished eating and I'm already thinking about the next meal. Hie Hie was holding a black bag in his right hand, which contained his changed liberation shoes. He naturally knew what Hie Hie was thinking. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But I told her the truth anyway. Probably not. This is her 18th birthday, so of course it will be grand. Hie Hie walked slowly and spoke unhurriedly. Click. It's so loud, is this the sound of someone's dream being shattered? Hie Hie wilted instantly, and her pace slowed down from 2 squares at a time to 1 square at a time. Oh. Hie Hie had already walked to her side at this time. I saw her eyes staring blankly at the road beneath her feet. I don't know where my thoughts have wandered to. It seems that the interest has been low, and there seems to be a kind of barely perceptible loneliness. After all, she is a girl. Hie Hie stretched out his left hand and touched her head. I don't know where I'm looking at or what I'm looking at. Home is just around the corner, and the neon lights on the street are so bright. Wait until Yazi is 18 years old. Brother will definitely give you a bigger party. After saying that, he looked at Hie Hie with a faint smile. The dim light from the street lamps shone on his body, as if covering him with a monochrome painting. It seems that he can already see the future in his eyes. Hie Hie hesitated for a moment, then suddenly raised his head. Then he nodded heavily. The smile is so bright and healing. Just this one word. But the rhyme is full of yearning and unquestionable belief. Let's go home. The brother and sister walked towards the neon lights ahead. Occasionally, some random words were heard during this time. By the way, brother, do you remember what you owe me? What? Nothing. Go, 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 let's see who can run home first, let's start. Ein Kurzen heller Saal, a candlelit salon, the sound of the spurs, the glitter of the ribbons. Where does the music come from? The blood is boiling in my veins. So noisy. Mein Madchen, gib mir den Pokal. Girl, pass me the glass. Is it a dream? You, what exactly are you? Here's the question again. This is the nth time. Hie Hie slowly opened his eyes. Looking around, I confirmed that I was at home. He dreamed of the golden dragon pupil again. The voice asked him all night long, repeating a stupid question. Even as he roared the answer into the surrounding darkness, he showed no sign of stopping. Instead, it became louder and more frequent. Hie Hie couldn't help but close his eyes again and sighed softly. I'm Hie Hie. The music on the side was still playing, never getting tired of it. Only then did he come to his senses. Pick up Nokia next to the pillow. At this time, Grande Valses repeated again and again. An unknown number was displayed on the phone screen. But Hie Hie picked up the phone anyway. Hello. That dream really tortured him so much that he even spoke weakly. Oh. Hie Hie. Good morning. There was a strong voice inside. It's just that the tone of his voice seems a little strange. A smell of pastoral pastures. Professor Guderian, what can I do for you? Hie Hie recognized the owner of the voice and sat up immediately. But I still couldn't help scratching my hair. He didn't give them any contact information. Because they definitely knew. After all, there is Eva who controls almost all the information in the world. As long as they want, they may know what they ate yesterday. Hie Hie, do you want to come and meet your future classmate in advance? He's a boy from the same city as you, and he's a very outstanding young man. From the same city, classmates. Who else could it be? Hie Hie stood up and put on his windbreaker and checked the time. Saturday, May 14, 2009, 6:31 am. He was afraid of waking up his parents and sister, so he left a note on the table. Then he went straight out the door. Hello? Hie Hie, are you still there? There was another voice on the other end of the line. Hie Hie put the phone to his ear and walked into the aisle. The days in summer always get brighter earlier. The sunlight just happened to emerge from the eaves of a distant house, reflecting outside the passage he had just walked out of. Then he leaned over to the boy's face. There is no sadness or joy, but the spirit is so powerful that it can almost make people kneel down. Of course, I've wanted to see him for a long time. Chapter 50. At some point in an unknown year, have you ever had a lonely and passionate dream? I dreamed that I was wearing handsome armor, holding a sword that shines with great power. Ahead is a monster that is capable of slaughtering the world. You stand in front of him alone. You draw your sword and mount your horse. You try your best. You finally defeated him after being wounded. You smiled and looked back at the person you were protecting. Oh, they are still smiling and going on with their usual lives. In the sun, in the warmth. Didn't even see you. You smiled slightly, thinking how awesome you were. No need to gain anything, no need to be remembered. Is this really what you want? Hie Hie walked quickly on the way to the Regent Hotel. To be precise, it's close to running. He didn't know why he was so eager to see that person. I don't even know what to do when I see him. Give him a beating. This is what Hie Hie wants to do most at this moment. No reason, my heart is just beating like this. Otherwise, his eyes wouldn't be so ferocious at this moment. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of the Regent Hotel. Just as he was about to go up. But I saw it next to the ornamental fish pond. One was wearing a light pink knee-length skirt and a pair of Chelsea boots. A girl with long dark red hair draped over her shoulders squatted on the gravel road at the edge. There was a slight smile on the corner of his mouth. Holding a brown bread in his left hand, he threw it into the pool little by little with his right hand. Only drop it in one place at a time. The fish only live in one place. It's just different from her. Because there were very few people here at this time, it seemed that only 2 people stopped here. She looked at the fish. Look at her, Hie Hie. It can't be said to be a look, in fact it's just a glance. He was not interested in it. Just, thought of myself at a certain time. For every steamed bun, half of it would be used to feed the fish. An umbrella also protects the puppy from the rain. Just stand in the rain with him. You can spend a long time. Hie Hie continued to go towards his destination. The waiter seemed to know the name and appearance in advance. As soon as he entered, he was taken to the direct elevator. Still stopped at the top floor. After the door opened, Hie Hie walked straight in. Unfortunately, there was no one he wanted to see inside. But there were indeed two more people, a man and a woman, both of whom looked older than Hie Hie. Hie Hie is here. Really fast. Guderian was adjusting his tie and was obviously surprised to see Hie Hie coming so quickly. But before Hie Hie could speak, he started introducing people again. By the way, let's get to know each other. It seemed that everything was almost sorted, so he freed his hands and patted both of them on the shoulders. The beautiful girl on the left is Jidaki, and the handsome boy on the right is Yesheng. They are both your seniors. If you have any questions or need help in the future, just ask them. Hie Hie nodded slightly to indicate that he understood. Unexpectedly, Yesheng came over directly, touched his chin with his right hand, and looked him up and down. As if confirming something, he nodded slightly. Then extend your right hand and smile naturally. Hello, Hie Hie, I'm Yesheng, Sheng is in victory. Hello. Hie Hie looked at the man in front of him with a cheerful and energetic look between his brows. Just shook hands calmly. If you want to learn diving and surfing in the future, come to me. I can teach you better than a national level coach. Yesheng placed his right hand on Hie Hie's shoulder, looking confident. Seeing this, Hie Hie still smiled lightly and said naturally, yes, definitely. He does seem to be a passionate person. At least it wasn't awkward to talk to. Okay, it's about time, let's go. Guderian buttoned his suit jacket and tugged at it a few more times. Then he gently lifted the cuff of his left hand, revealing a light silver-white Omega 36mm master chronometer watch. After confirming the time was correct, he signaled that it was time to leave. So the four of them stood in the elevator. Hie Hie put his hands in the pockets of his windbreaker. The veins in his right arm had already bulged. Because he had clenched his fist for a long time. He had been suppressing the rage in his heart that was about to burn the back of his fist. But the more so. The fire became more unruly and violent. Bite. As the elevator chime sounded, the door opened on the 9th floor, the executive floor. Guderian strode towards the table by the window. And in the direction he was heading, there was a young man. The corners of his eyes droop slightly, and there is a sense of tightness between his eyebrows. Hie Hie slowly walked out of the elevator door. He was the last one. It is also the least conspicuous one. Canvas shoes will also make a slight clicking sound when stepping on the ground. Yes, it really is him. It's really him at this moment. Everything on the 9th floor suddenly began to vibrate. Whether it was Guderian, Yesheng, or Aki, everyone seemed to be suppressed by an indescribable force and could not even raise their heads. The goblet still filled with red wine exploded with a bang, and a blood-red flower bloomed in the air. Then it remained in the air, shaking violently. The glass, tables, and chairs around seemed to be pulled inexplicably, making squeaking sounds. It seemed like it would break into pieces at any moment. Then it was crushed into slag. At this moment, everyone was speechless. Even screaming was not possible. I could only lower my head and support myself on the ground with my limbs. This seems to make it better. All that could be heard around seemed to be a few slow click sounds. It was like someone was walking among the crowd. The target was a young man who seemed unaffected and still in a state of panic. Yeah, of course he'll be fine. Even the supernuclear True King's power. Hello. Lu Mingfei. Hie Hie was already standing on the dining table in front of Lu Mingfei, bending slightly, looking down at the young man who had not yet come to his senses. There was a sense of oppression overflowing from those eyes that were sparkling with golden light, and there was a deep and cold smile at the corners of his mouth. We meet again. When Lu Mingfei saw the face clearly, a feeling that he thought had faded away burst out again. Hug him, kill him. You, who are you? No, what are you? What did you do to them? He suddenly became manic and knocked over the stool he was sitting on when he stood up. Hie Hie gently stretched out his right hand and clenched his 5 fingers. Lu Mingfei flew directly towards him. It feels like being pushed by something. It's really interesting that people keep asking who he is lately. I have only one question for you. He had no patience for the protagonist in front of him, nor did he have the intention to explain the problem to him. Liu Mingfei was lifted into the air by an inexplicable force, and his limbs suddenly became unable to move at all. It was like being nailed to a cross in some shrine. The person in front of him is a madman, or perhaps more like a judge holding a nail and a hammer. It seemed that he would be nailed here forever at any time. He was scared. He once thought that he was inexplicably indifferent to all emotions. I'll only ask once. Hie Hie's hands were still in the pockets of his windbreaker. It has already turned dark blue in color. His gradually paler face made him look more and more like a Avenger crawling out of hell. But the majesty and the terrifying force of oppression in his eyes did not disappear in the slightest. It's even still rising. He slowly pulled his hand out and then grasped Liu Mingfei's throat. The voice seemed to become a little hoarse at some point. What if there was a girl who loved you very much, and she died because of your hesitation and cowardice? Now I'll give you another chance to start over, you. Will it happen again? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.